Right, okay. Okay, at 3 o'clock, I need to go to a steering committee meeting because that's my life. So that's where I'm going to begin right away. Okay. Just a couple things before we really get underway. Next semester, the proposal was to either be on the Wednesday, well, I had to move it to the Thursday, but I came with another proposal because it turns out that a number of staff really can't make it here unless it's on a Wednesday. Because technically they're not supposed to have anything on a Wednesday other than something they want to do. So I was going to propose 4 to 7 on Wednesdays. Is that okay? Case. So, yeah?
Yes.
No? The other reason, Dan, we were just discussing on whether or not, technically we were having this seminar on Wednesday because there was this PG cert thing that was going on the Thursdays. But I think Wednesday is better for a number of reasons, partly because in London and elsewhere, a lot of the openings are on Thursday night. And so for me to move it to the Thursday meant that we would then be prevented from going to any of these openings. Not that anybody is going to them, but in case on the rare moment that we could do it, we'd all rush to London and go to the openings.
Sorry, I can't help it. I'm not here. Sorry.
Anyway, would Wednesday from 4 to 7 be okay for you?
Yeah, that's what
I think that it might, Sophie, you're not happy with that?
No, I just have to kind of arrange things, but it could be done.
It could be done.
I think. I'm not sure. Wednesday's a tricky day for me because my son has choir and all kinds of things, so it's logical. But, yeah.
Okay. I mean, with Thursday, is anybody able, is Thursday the preferred time, 1 to 4?
How about Wednesday 5 to 8?
Well, the school closes at 8, and they're quite
Strict.
annoying about that.
They bang the door at 10.
Yeah, so that's why I thought 4 to 7, to be honest. Wednesday's better for you.
Yeah, about 3 till 6. Would that be better for you?
We can't do 3 to 6. That would have been better for me. But that looks great. But John Butler wanted to have meetings. That was his. So, and since I love John and I'm willing to do anything for him, I said yes. We would move the seminar, but only by an hour. Okay, so that's why it can't be 3. Mark, how's it for you? Is it?
Yeah, yeah. We'll start.
I figured that you guys go drinking afterwards anyway. So this way it gives you the possibility to be able to drink at a normal time without feeling badly about it. Not that you're feeling badly about it, because obviously you're not feeling badly. That's right, that's right. Nobody did. Okay.
I thought it meant we'd have to drink before the session.
Okay.
Before and after.
Okay, so shall I now, because I want to get your approval before I send it out to the wider group. So that's okay then?
Yes.
Well, my circumstances will have changed anyway come January, because we're moving, so it probably will hopefully quickly. So it might be easier actually.
Okay, great. That would be great. Good. Okay, so we're going to try that. Okay, and if it doesn't work, then we'll revert to Plan B. We'll see how it goes, and if you find it annoying, then we'll do something else. Right. Hey, Dan, do you want to join the table?
Of course, yeah.
Is that for the
Year ones.
Well, we can. It doesn't really matter, since the real reason we're doing it was so that the PhD students could come to a more thing. But now that we're not moving to the Thursday, we could start it from the 8th onward. Would you like to do that?
Wow.
Yes, no, sweet.
Yes, yes.
Okay, good, good, okay, all right, everybody, testy. Okay,
So 4 p.m. on the 8th of January.
yeah. Okay. Now the other thing is that we have Lee in our midst. And, oh,
I'm late.
that's okay, you made it. Do you mind if we have the seminar starting 4 to 7 next semester on Wednesdays, as opposed to on the Thursday where we're going to have to move it?
Wednesday's better for me.
Okay, so
Yeah.
is 4 to 7 okay?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant, so that's what we're gonna do.
Great.
Okay. Oh, seems to be obviously the right decision. Okay, good, good, good. Fine. The other thing is that I am interested in putting on a kind of conference where we can get some publications out of it or something. And I wanted to do it, as I mentioned on the thing, on alchemy or magic or something like that. And playing around with all sorts of things around dimension and time and monstrosity and so on. Are you thinking this is a good idea, bad idea, reasonable idea? I was thinking we'd have it by the end of May or middle of June.
Cool.
Cool? Okay, good.
Would there be a room for a piece that is made out of exchanges?
No.
Sorry. I respect that. Sometimes it happens that after the seminar it's written by somebody and then somebody picks up on it. And I was wondering if we could expand on that kind of thing.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Because every so often we just go around with the idea of doing something collaboratively.
Yeah.
It comes up very informally. This could be good if anybody's interested.
What do we, how about if on the CFAR we can have a blog? Okay, that seems to, blog, we can blog on it. Is that not a good idea?
I was thinking for the publication.
Oh, I see, yeah, well, but we can have it on the blog and then we can lift it off the thing. Dane, does that sound like a nightmare for you?
I don't know if site is
Bloggable?
sort of has sort of a blogging feature.
Well, that's really easy.
Any
as
activity
well.
need any extra software.
The
You
blog,
just sign up to WordPress.
Yeah, you could integrate, but I don't know how the actual website.
Well, you can just do it on any browser.
I can ask Chris and see.
the problem with blogging is that it then requires that we keep up with it. Like with a certain regularity, otherwise it looks really bad.
And you would need someone, yeah.
Okay,
reading everything that
all right,
goes
we'll
on.
go back to plan A. Plan A is just send emails around to each other.
Well, you could just put it on a Word document and you put stuff in the document and then if it's just for, obviously it's not just going round and round, if it's for the
No,
publication for
it's not simply, I was not thinking of just picking up the exchange as it happens, so I want you to expand it, but if we have pieces that are linked,
Okay,
it happened 2 or 3 times within this year last year that there were comment response to a 4 times.
right, okay, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it seems to me that we ought to be able to put those on the web.
okay, no, that's also fine.
I mean, maybe not as a blog, as a living blog, but as a, as somehow to make it just alive. I'm just thinking, if you wanted to. Okay, I say, don't hold back.
Okay.
You know, if you have something to say, say it, and we'll just send it around. We're gonna go around real quick, because I wanna hear what your projects are, and then we will begin. First of all, I want to thank Kate for what turns out to be an extremely interesting session. People loved it, and you know, so I'm speaking on their behalf, although they're perfectly capable of telling you themselves. And so thank you for that. Did you enjoy doing
You're
it?
very welcome. I sweated quite a lot.
You seem very cool.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah, it was very good for me. Yeah.
Yeah? You still a Lacanian after all that?
Yeah,
Okay, people.
but I'm really intrigued why people hate him so much. I don't really understand it, and I'd be interested in.
That's great. That's great.
Because I don't see
He's
a
not
problem
hated.
with Chris
His work is
Davis,
hated.
Irigere Six, those women, I think that fits entirely with into his project.
agree.
I know they fell out.
No, I agree they fit in. The only one I think doesn't.
Post-Lacanian.
Yeah, they're post-Lacanian, but the only
Yeah.
one I think is slightly better about that work that you just mentioned is partly Edie Gade, her later work, and partly Cixous. Christeva, I think, is really hard work as well. I mean, I don't mean hard work as in terms of difficult. I mean, she has very similar polemical issues that I would have take issue with.
Yeah, I haven't got my head around it. That's.
But we have an expert on Christeva
Yes.
in the class.
Yes.
So, and what's happening with the mentorship stuff? Do you?
The deadline has been extended till this Friday.
Okay.
So I'm still accepting applications. I have, like I said, my tier a budget, which I'd very much like to disperse and perhaps people to pay people to be mentors, because there's a sort of I have a disproportionate amount of applications. There's a lot of people wanting to be mentored, but not so many mentors.
Well, I know that Mark wanted
I've got
to mentor.
Mark's, nearly got Matthias.
I mean, anybody else
So-
anyone want money? Extra money? Okay.
That's a silly question.
That's right. I mean, you gotta work for it, okay, there's that small detail, but,
It'd be very cross-disciplinary. There's people at Parks, there are people at School of Jewellery, but I can
and
see
what do you have to
connections
do,
already.
what do you have to, how do you have to mentor them?
The mentoring, really, I think it's very flexible. It's about I see it as sort of three strands. One is people would genuinely want support because they've just started and they want, support of the experience of it. But then there's also a lot of people would like to build their research profile in terms of starting publications, conferences, that sort of thing. And not a lot of people that I've spoken to really know how to go about it or are very confident about building their research profile. And also, some people would like to increase their employability through experience of teaching and research and art projects, and the mentor basically is someone who has it's like outside your supervisory team, someone you can speak to every few weeks. You can text if you're having a crisis to sort of
And how
develop
much do you get? You get paid by the hour, or how does that work?
It's by the hour, but I can only really allocate like 20 hours per person, but it's not really quantifiable by hours. So basically,
Right.
you'd get a sum, but it has the way it goes through the system is it has to be by hours. So
Right.
it would approximately be
And this,
50-ish.
yeah, it's 150, something like that.
Yeah.
And then you take taxes off.
Depending on how much you
The
earn.
university takes taxes off. Anyway, so 150 pounds for Christmas would not be such a drag next Christmas. But anyway, so please, sign up for this. I mean, and you can count me in. I mean, I'll sign up.
Also, if you want to be a mentee, my role would
What
be
is a mentee?
someone who would be mentored. If you want to, like, for
Oh, I
example,
see, right.
if you wanted to have a curatorial experience, my role would be speaking to people like Gavin Wade, speaking to people at the library, expanding that network so you've got professionals to speak to
Yeah,
at
come on
different
in.
universities. So it could be expanded that way as well.
So, I just wanted to chat to you.
Okay,
Do you have a moment a little bit later on today?
yes,
What time would be good?
4. Good. Sorry, can you say that sentence again?
Yes, so I could also bring in professionals, throughout wherever, artists,
Great.
scholars, whatever.
Okay.
Scholars. If you could so call them that, I don't know.
So does anybody want to do this? Lauren, you gonna do it? No. Okay, let's do it. Okay, just so you know it's available. Great, okay.
Can we invite somebody across to speak to us?
What's that?
Like, could the money pay for an artist to come and speak to our group? Like my friend Simon Thompson is a really interesting artist, and a really interesting speaker. And they wouldn't be able to come unless he was paid. They might be able to come for a session.
But it's not that kind of thing. It's
No,
not
and
speaker
also
speak.
artist fees would be like a massive chunk. I imagine it would be the equivalent of like 20 hours or something, from my experience of getting paid for talks.
Yeah.
If there was
Yeah,
enough
no, I was
people who
thinking
wanted
he would
to,
get all of it because he would have to pay his train to come from Belgium to here. I wouldn't get any money.
So no is the short answer to that. Yeah. No.
So
No. It's not. No. It's
if
not.
there are
It's
other
not
pot-
meant
if
for
there are
that.
other pots of money, it could be, but as we know, budgets are
Yeah. Very very
pretty
cool
tight.
at the
So
moment, yeah. Okay. Good. You want to just go around very quickly so that Lee, because what we know about Lee is very little. He's a man of few words, and we're going to stop that. No. So, and the thing is that what we kind of know about Lee is that he's a web designer on some level, but he doesn't want to be known that way any longer, and not in this room. Okay, so in this room, he's a different animal. So to help him, we're going to go around the room very quickly and remind ourselves what we do. Sentence or two.
Stuart Munkage, second year part-time fine art MA, and I've sort of been bludgeoning words this week into an AHRC compatible format and my research and practice. So yeah, it's heading up.
And what is it?
What
is your practice?
Both of them are interesting sort of Deleuzian idea of the fold, and also how we experience our environments. So I have been getting quite phenomenological this week again, more so maybe, and even with some David Abrams, who I didn't know of.
Good.
So, yeah.
Okay. Which one?
The Spell and Sensuous.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's quite good.
so I've only read a chunk of it, but yeah, Henry recommended it. So.
Good. Great.
Grace, second year PhD, practice led. So I'm looking at the documentation of female mediums that produced ectoplasm in the 1920s as the spirit of the dead.
Well done. And you just gave your talk yesterday.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a bit typical.
I told you ectoplasm.
But that's because you're being led. You said ectoplasm now, so everyone hears it.
That's what you say. Every time it comes up, I keep thinking this, so I feel like I'll share my misery with you.
Is this your head?
This is what it sounds like in my head. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Grace.
I told you ectoplasm.
Good. Excellent. Okay, just let that lie. Go on.
Oh, it's me.
Ectoplasm.
I'm the ectoplasm. And I am also second year PhD, not practice-led, and I am working around the notion of possibility, internal causality in complex systems. Particularly, I found recently that there is a gap between two notions of aesthetics in Kant, which is what I am looking at the moment.
There's a gap between what?
The two notions of aesthetics in Kant. The aesthetic as acknowledged determinate judgment, and the aesthetic as complex judgment. And that refers to order, and is what I understand emergence to be, so I'm trying to bring that in.
Have you read or seen the book by Husserl called Internal Time Consciousness?
I know of it, I haven't read it.
Because that, if you're going to go in that area, you should take a look at that. Sorry. And what's really great about it is got a preface by Heidegger, when Heidegger was not selling him out at that point.
I'm Dane, I'm a PhD student. My research is generally concerned with the use of real-time systems in contemporary art, and focus on digital temporality and how time is reimagined through alternative notions of sequences, non-linear climaxes, de-sequencing, and bringing that into line with algorithmic information theory, looking at Gödel, Chait, and Turing. And this week I'm looking at the links between Spinoza and Einstein, which is good fun.
Good. Very nice. It's really sad when he has that glint in his eye. It's, it's scary. It's very good. Very good. Thanks.
I'm Jacqueline. I recently completed an art practice research PhD.
It's Dr. Jacqueline.
I'm still not used to it yet. And my PhD looked at the interrelation between writing and painting through an exploration of Sisu, Irigaray and Steva, to put forward a non-representational articulation of subjectivity and intelligence.
Now, you don't have to say it so clearly because it's not a viva any longer, but you did well. You did well. Good, good, good.
I'm Ben. I'm an artist and I also teach here as well. My work is multimedia based. Currently, I'm interested in the role of theatre into everyday life through training simulations for counter-response teams, whether it's ambulance, army, air force, whatever, and delving more deeper into the virtual training side of things.
Huh. It's interesting. So at some point we have to see some of your work.
I wanted to talk to you last week, even at the party, and I never got a chance. I ended up talking about boring educational to other people, but I really wanted to talk to you about this new bid I'm putting in. I'm working with the ETA, which is the company that produces this software.
Oh,
the
great.
Netherlands Institute of Safety, who are providing all the training academies for ambulance.
This
fire.
bid you're putting in isn't a Nesta bid, is it?
No.
Oh, thank God. Okay. What bid is it?
Well, at the moment, I've only just started the meetings as to the strategy of how we're going to apply. We've spent the last 6 months getting all these organisations on board. We have the West Midlands Fire Department as well on board. So.
But can you name the bid?
No. What I need to do is I need to fill in this PLU form.
No, PNF.
PNF, which is the beginning of the proposition to BCU for them to.
No, but actually, you need to see me because they've changed the rules.
Okay.
So you need to fill in a form that I have, sadly. But no, is it the councils that are putting it out? Is it AHRC? Is it Nesta? Is it Leverhulme? Is it Welcome? Who is it?
I had a meeting with Jane Farron last week, and she said that I need to put in this form through, which outlines the project.
I know.
Through there though, what it is that I have to suggest collaboratively with BCU what the right organisation to bid for.
Oh, so you don't know what bid you're applying
No.
for? Ah, okay, got it. Okay, so in fact, I think you've been given a bit of the wrong advice. We'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about that afterwards. Okay, but it sounds interesting, because I think I can give you guidance on that. Yeah, yeah.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm doing MA Media Arts Philosophy Practice full-time. This week I've been looking at Adorno. I'm attempting a question on Adorno, and I've been reading Minima Moralis, which I love. Moralia, sorry, got it wrong.
That's right.
At the party I called it Maxima. I was very drunk. Yeah, what else? Oh, I edited a film. It was quite funny. I edited a film of installation. I'm a multimedia artist, and I did a sort of happening at Victoria Square, which Grace saw, with Dances with Light, and I edited it and I put it up on Facebook, and they took it down and said I didn't have copyright. And so then I had to fight it and say I do have copyright, and so Facebook, because I put it back up. So that was all good. Oh, and I bought a house as well, so I had a week.
You bought a house?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I gave it an offer on Monday and they accepted it, and I was like, wow. And it's got a cellar, so I can convert it into a dark room. It's very exciting.
Wow. And what, let's not even, okay, we'll just stop that one there right now. Okay, good, that sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Natalia, and I'm will start my PhD study in February. And I'm looking at the moment use of brain in fashion design.
The use of the brain in fashion design.
Yes.
Okay, it's changed slightly.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's slightly changed.
After the mad meeting on Saturday, right? Okay.
Yeah, and column. At the moment, I'm playing with the name like tasting linear system, tasting like a thin body as tasting linear system. Testing.
Oh, testing a leniency system.
Yep.
Okay, I'm not sure I know what that is.
I'm looking into the, as I said, it's not similar, but like one field. Let's say if I'm looking in design as this is unseen, in music, silence, and in social is immigration. So the systems which could add some free interpretation or something space for creative interpretation for anybody, for anything.
Openness.
Immigration is not really openness.
No, not at all. I'm not sure why immigration is part of fashion design.
Because Ikebana and fashion design, because of different design system, like Western and Eastern.
But why is it immigration?
I find, I found that most probably, I'm not sure, but I'm just testing this, is it could be applying it to the system. Because immigration is, it's not just mixed of the system. There are also, it could be stiff, and then we have a problem, like we have problems in media. But if it will be flexible, like we will have a system like in Japan, when they apply to philosophies, like Chinese and Japanese religions together, never had any war, never had any religion war. So it's quite complex meanings about the immigration merging, probably something.
Well, I think that you're going to run into significant problems with that. And the reason I say that is because what you're actually suggesting is that there is a possible utopian system that if you can figure out the right kind of combination of the unseen or the openness, then there will be no trauma, violence, or whatever. And that is deeply flawed as a
it is true, but somehow this notion is so popular in popular culture. I mean, in social.
There'd be no way you could prove that. That you're taking as a given something that is just your opinion about what popular opinion is saying. Which popular opinion? Whose popular opinion?
No, I would say if we would check newspapers, immigration, every newspaper you will have some article about immigration. I mean, in social life.
Yes, but the article about immigration is usually about why there should not be people coming in.
Exactly.
Stealing the the benefits.
Exactly.
So in what way is that? I'm not understanding what you're suggesting.
This is my if it would be lenient system, like empty space in Ikebana, which representation of like let's say in the East, the representation of God is
but
empty space on silence.
Let's just take as a given the hard part, and then we'll unfortunately have to move on. Yeah. If it were just a matter of saying, look, everybody, stop being racist. Here's the problem with racism. You guys are deeply idiotic, and then they hit themselves in the head and they go, oh gosh, good thing you pointed that out. Now I'm not going to be. Okay.
No, it's not that.
So the fact of the matter is that the leniency or not, or the so-called openness or not of a system, if people who engage in that system are creating a situation that refuses to have a liberal democracy, because that's what you're basically talking about, or some form of liberalism, utilitarian liberalism, then Ikebana or otherwise, it's not going to happen because there's power relations going on. So what you're really addressing in your thesis is the way in which a system, any system, creates interlocking power environments that either create a rigidity or create an openness. And if it creates an openness, you're suggesting that that is being put forward in an Ikebana scenario where it doesn't have to be in your face openness. So it doesn't have to be so, every 5 minutes saying we are open, but in fact it just is open, is what I'm actually hearing your project is about. So I think you'll get off track if you start talking about immigration the way you're suggesting it, and at the same time talking about this thing called Ikebana, if really what you're trying to say is that in a fashion moment, the thing that creates the openness of creativity is the way in which the ideological positions around, in this case, the Japanese move of different systems, interact to create some kind of cultural fashion, how the fashion actually is literally fashioned. Yeah? Not sure.
Yeah, because there are, in music, we have silence.
No, that's, see, again, too broad a claim.
well, I talk with composer, and he claiming that before 60s there wasn't silence in European music at all.
And you believe this guy?
Well,
just because someone claims it, it's true.
Well, he pointed out some not research.
Well, what about Poulon and people like that?
No,
people were doing silence way before the 60s.
Yes, I mean there are not full stop. Silence is not just full stop, or the silence is not just something before music, and after it's also.
But Schoenberg was doing it as well. I mean, that's a spurious problem.
Okay,
yeah.
Time out. Okay, so now we're gonna, now that we've decimated your project, let's move on. But there are very serious flaws in what you're doing, and it's not to embarrass you or to say, boo,
No, it's
Natalie.
good to hear them now, or some opinion now.
But
rather
this goes
than
for everybody. The way in which one sets up a claim about the work, it has to be done in such a way that it's not just, a commonsensical position that you're then going to say, this is what I'm arguing, or this is what I'm not arguing, because it's too broad, and there's no way that you could then deal with it. So even though we talk about something like, let's say, space and time, which is about as broad as you can get, or the notion of the infinite, or something like that, and that might sound broad, or the questions of dimension that we were talking about for the last couple of weeks, it isn't done, or hopefully it's not done in a way that forecloses the possibility of saying that is wrong or right based on something other than one's decision that they feel like it should be wrong or right. So the whole thing about research is that you can prove it. By proving it doesn't mean you have to be in a position of, let's say, the typical science position where it has to do with observation and an experiment. The proof can be, in fact, it can be a logical consistency. That situates the proof. But it has to have a proof.
Yeah,
and it has to not have an answer already embedded in it, which is what you were suggesting. That's why I was being hard on you. Because otherwise you just trip yourself up, and you'll just end up saying something as spurious as this lovely composer, who's probably a very nice person. And probably the music that that person does is probably excellent. But
I forget what he.
Okay, we will ignore the composer. Okay, Kate, what's your work?
I think this is part of the process of doing a PhD, especially before you've actually started it.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay to fish about, isn't it? It's okay to.
Definitely.
It's not okay. No, I disagree with that. I think it's okay to be confused and lost.
Yeah, that's what.
But not at the point of starting so far back that you prevent yourself from actually getting to your goal. And what I'm worried about, what I was hearing just now, is that you set yourself so far back on the, I don't mean like you've regressed, I mean that the project is so far back that you can't even get to the beginning because it's so big. It's like, here's the world, and now I'm going to try and swim in it and find my way around, because you'll drown. And I will not allow that to happen. You are allowed to be lost, but not that lost. Okay? You can't be that lost. You have to be able to figure out how the questions operate. What are you really hungry about figuring out? That's what you have to answer. Don't try and answer some sort of somebody's view of the world. What's your one that you're hungry about? That's why you keep getting lost, because you don't allow yourself to ask your question. And that's why I'm giving you a hard time. Okay? So you have to, yes?
And then the focus gets tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter.
And then you get
become more
strangled.
and more clear.
It's a lovely process, actually. Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to say that I recognise the floundering. And it's okay. Well,
I do too, but
yeah.
I'm harder.
Yeah.
I'm more of a bastard than you are.
No, you have to be.
Yeah.
I'm just this week starting an article which I've been putting off for months now. I had it accepted for a French journal called E-Ray. They were asking for articles on the later Lacan. And I'm writing about Edward Bond's play Born, which has a rattle in it. It has a rattle that kind of comes and goes and does interesting things. So I'm writing about time and space as they are altered by the sound of a rattle. But I'm finding it very hard to get started because I'm absolutely knackered and I just need a holiday.
Okay, well, the holiday's coming, we're gonna get there. Okay, that sounds interesting. So, anybody want to help out on that rattle? There might be a couple of people in here that could help out with rattle relations. Mark?
Mark, postdoc research body.
It's also Dr. Mark.
Yeah.
Dr. Kate.
And then we finished with Braver. I've gone back to Braver. We did the ground is ground, so how does I do the ground? How does he, was it the grounding of the ground, as he does? And maybe a bit of Zizek as well, objectifying subjectivities or subjectifying objectivities, this kind of thing we're looking at. But
Which Zizek are you looking at?
Naked fantasies.
Oh.
Fetishes. Yeah, but mainly Heidegger reading the small print from notes and things. The grounding of the ground, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So somebody can experience on my. I've heard of the Hegel rants, like sometimes people describe me. I want to be able to do the same with a Heidegger and really, be able to speak the language, as it were.
Nice.
So that'd be something to look forward to.
Oh, great. We're going to skip you for a minute, Lee.
Not really good. My research is on notions of event. And this, I think it's interesting to tell you about. I've been sort of, I suppose I have a bit of a habit of collecting my favourite quotes. So
So today's favourite quote, yes.
Well, no. From 2002, I sort of started writing in pieces which were sort of connected to my research, really. And so I decided that it would be a useful exercise to, like, in relation to the sort of map of the structures of my thesis. So just not that I'm imposing that on myself. But I decided to have these sort of 6A3s that perhaps to each chapter or whatever, or chapter each or whatever, and to sort of sort these quotes from all these different writings into sort of like, it's like a collage exercise, but not kind of well, it was funny because in this piece I wrote in 2002, the quote I had on the front page was from avant-garde Guy Debord's on détournement or something, and it related to the idea of, like, it was sort of critical of cutting out quotes from but as if you sort of wrench them from their context, kind of, and but I suppose I think I'm critical of what he's saying there to some extent in relation to sort of an issue event in a different way to how what Lyotard is putting forward with the figural. So what I'm not applying a Guy Debord's kind of use of my quotes, like when I gather them together and collage them in this way. I'm sort of wanting to sort of operate with it more like a tonal thing, but also the sort of a chance operation to sort of, I thought I'd have a sort of hierarchy. So at the moment I've got these sort of 6 things and they've got sort of different piles on where, like, things seem to relate. And I thought I'd give myself another 6 sheet and try and pull out sort of 3 or 5, and then I might get down to 2. I suppose I sort of like, I thought this was quite a helpful structure when you got these sort of quotes at the beginning of the chapter. So just to sort of, and it's not like the quotes are going to be, oh, that's what I agree with or something. It's more about sort of how this exercise might spark something, spark a thought or something that I don't. So it's sort of.
So that's how you're talking about how the event. You're thinking the collaged quotes as a way of targeting a different way of.
I think maybe saying this in relation to sort of. Maybe this relates to sort of when you research prose, I'm not saying this would be my method. I suppose I was thinking about distinction between manner and method. This might be one manner that I'm just applying at this point in time in my process of my research, but it also relates to sort of the notion of event. In practice, it's applying that in its logic.
I can see that.
So.
Okay, good.
Andrew. Hello. I've had a very making week.
Oh, good.
Making and trying to understand dimensions.
And have you been still sitting on the marble?
Yeah, so quite a lot.
Is that so?
Standing on it this week actually.
Oh, good.
Stood one of them up and stood on it and noticed how much you the others did and you that much higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what colour is the marble? Do you have a?
It's white.
Is it all white?
It's got a grey vein in it.
Yeah. Where?
It's just a few like lightly dispersed around the two.
So when you're standing on it, did you take that in consideration?
You can't really see because it's sort of that square, so my feet pretty much fill it, so I just stand high. I
With
sound
your
like
shoes
I'm
on or
bonkers.
off?
Yeah, I'm.
You are bonkers.
Yeah, I sound like a, yeah.
Yeah. You have your shoes on.
Yeah.
So do you ever feel with marble with your shoes off?
I'm not. I sat on it naked the other day.
So it's but do you have
experience.
Did you keep your shoes on?
Did you keep your shoes on?
Yeah, I didn't think about putting them back on. It's practical. Yeah, I just walk around. It's pretty much what I'm.
Now, Natalia, I know that this might sound very general here, okay, but in fact, it's specific.
Yeah.
And do we know, how can you tell the difference between that being specific versus other things being, how does one know the difference between specific and general?
I suppose it all kind of fits into my interests in the sense some kind of the relationship between, I suppose it's kind of a bit wider at the moment, I've kind of gone a bit out of the materiality of photography and sculpture, and so I kind of suppose I sit on the marble because it's hard, and then I'll walk in front of my coloured wall because you change colour but it's not physical, so it's two different.
Is there a multi-personal experience?
Kind of. Obviously,
It's the sensual, isn't it?
it's the sensuous, yeah, sensual.
Yeah, it's the old gland going.
It's the old pineal gland.
Yeah,
That's right.
one over time.
Yeah.
But also that you look really satisfied and we want to know why.
Yeah,
That's right,
really
that's right.
happy.
It's very annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. I just really enjoy it.
Okay.
I'm good at that.
Okay, no, that's good, that's good. Okay, Lee, your turn. Now, you've heard everybody's different ways of approaching
Okay.
things.
Well, I'm Lee Hewitt. I work over at...
Don't
No.
mention work.
Okay, good, right, fine. I am an artist, maker. I spent the last week creating finishing two large installations for someone's house, a very rich person's house, which consists of, I use a lot of textiles. This consists of thousands of little felt and various other kind of spheres. My work is principally about the idea of having something that is very visual, but it doesn't really become the work until the person who's looking at it actually A looks at it, B touches it. So the work is pretty much all my work. It involves some reference or some need to touch, and so a lot of the materials that I use and a lot of the things that I create are designed to create in the viewer a desire to touch, and how that forces that viewer to kind of approach the work or want to approach the work, and when they approach the work they kind of become the work, and kind of an element of performance.
Does the work ever fall apart?
No. But then that's because I sell a lot of it, so I can't. You can't. I don't know, and B, you kind of.
It's not meant to fall apart.
It's not meant to fall apart because it's structurally and kind of. It moves. It has motion. It interacts with you. So all the
very bizarre.
It's, I haven't got them on. I can probably find some of it.
Yeah, good.
So they're all on wires. They're in various. I mean, I do various different sorts, but they have a dimensionality. So they kind of some are like that far out, some of this far out, and you kind of
Are they kinetic then?
And it's so you would touch it and they move, and they move at different rates and vibrate and various other things. I mean, that's what we're doing this week anyway, and will be for next month. So.
Ah. And is this the Bond Street installation?
No, that's no. That was I finished. That was a fairly large installation in July. I've done a few of them over the last year or 18 months. No, that was about 6 meters by 2 meter large installation, which was again using textiles, so felt instance, and colour, thousands of coloured squares, each one with a layer of textile above it in an opposing colour. They're all randomly generated colours, and they were, it was designed so, because obviously a lot of the work that I make is designed so that it's very specific to the site, specific to the space, certainly the permanent installations. So it was designed so that it kind of had, because they couldn't, the person couldn't touch it, I had to find another way of them interacting with the work that would allow the viewer to kind of
get united somehow.
Yeah, exactly. So that it changed as the viewer moved through the space, which is what I wanted to do, and which is generally what, again, another aspect that I try and include in all the aspects of the work.
And if it's 6 meters high, is that inside or outside?
It's inside, yeah. It's on a large. It's a new building well, a newish building on Bond Street, and it's in a kind of stairwell. But it's the stairs are on one side of it, and it's a large kind of open, kind of ancient space. And so the glass stairs that are on the right hand side of it, you kind of spiral up, and as you spiral up, the layers on the work kind of shift and the colours interact. And it's part of a series of works which go back to a couple of installations that I've done, which are to do with kind of the idea of also interference, and both through touch and visually and through moving through the space, and how that interferes with the work and changes it.
So the work is this dynamic?
Yeah, I mean it's dynamic. I mean it's dynamic in the sense that it shifts. It's not a flat. It's sculptural in the sense that it has kind of a dimension to it, and by you shifting your perspective, that dimension will change and the work will change.
Mm-hmm.
As it moves through space.
Interesting. Good. Interesting. I think that we're, with all of our different ways into things, there seems to be strands, overlapping strands, where people can, hopefully we all can figure out how to, get more out of each other's work, so that this becomes a very growing seminar apart from everything else. So today, I was not sure what I thought we should do, but I had originally suggested, and I would like to at least throw this out, to think about this question of the sublime and what it has to do with dimensionality, because that would be for me the way in. Now, did anybody prepare, because I don't want to usurp someone's seminar. Did someone prepare, Dane? Did Dane prepare?
Prepared in case.
That's right.
I'm doing a very small presentation.
Okay. Did anybody else other than Dane, in case we don't want to hear him? No. And, sorry, obviously a ratty mood. Sorry. So Dane, is Dane the only one that's presenting, or Grace, are you also presenting?
Yeah.
Leah, are you presenting? No, just kidding.
No,
okay. Okay, go on.
So I suggested last week that we take a look at Chapter 7 in Lyotard's The Inhuman Reflections on Time. It's the sublime and the avant-garde. In that he talks about the paintings of, talks about the painting of Barnett Newman.
Can you pass me the, no, show that to Lee, in case he hasn't seen this.
They're essentially abstract paintings with a drip coming down them, and Lyotard starts by saying...
Can you pass it around? Or do you need that too?
I might need a bit.
Okay.
It doesn't work very well.
Why don't you just turn it around?
I think it's in the Dropbox.
That's right.
They're all abstract paintings, but with like usually a
One
drip.
little drip, yeah, going down.
Yeah.
It's
Colour
a strip,
field.
no? It's not really dripped colour.
No, it's not
It's a
drip. Is
drip
it?
or a
It's
strip.
very
Some of them are more drip-like,
Drip.
some are more strip-like.
Oh, for heaven's sake, we have to get past
But-
this one sentence.
Right. Doesn't
Did he have a
matter.
drip or a strip?
Doesn't matter. Both, yeah, both. Both in all his work. He's
Okay, right.
Lyotard does
Drip,
mention
strip.
work, yeah. And Lyotard takes this as an example of the sublime by saying that this,
Drip.
yeah, drip provides access to what he calls the time of the event, this time before any sort of conceptuality, which allows the work to raise this question of, which he calls, is it happening?
I didn't know what that was about.
Who's the artist then?
Barnett Newman.
Thank you.
See, actually, it's going to be quite a long presentation.
If I can help it. Barnett Newman.
Okay.
And Lyotard says that this question, to be able to, for artwork to raise this question is the prime example of how you get to the sublime in or painting, art, anything.
And just because we were talking with Lee's work, would you think that raising the question, is it happening, is that a way that a work of art can become or can begin the process of interactivity, do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, right. It takes it back, like he says, the time of the event before any conceptualization, free from any structures in that sort of sense. So he says that Lyotard's argument is that the "it happens" actually does not happen in this sort of work, and so it stops happening, and the contemplation of that there's nothing going on, there's nothing further, is going to invoke a sort of a terror. But as a viewer, you come to realise that you're in a safe sort of position. You've got some distance between you and this nothingness that this artwork generates, and this safety suspension he calls a privation, which privation is sort of, it's a lack or a distancing or something like that, and a lack of basic necessity. So use the example of like a privation of light is a terror of darkness, that sort of thing. And because the viewer is in this safe position away from these terrors, that generates what is called delight. And
So in the presence of terror, but safe from the terror.
yeah, you've got that distance. It's there's a terror, sort of the questioning of that there's nothing happening, but you're in that position where you're safe from the nothing that is happening. So in that sense of safety is a sense of delight, and from that generates the sublime.
Okay, wait, that's a big jump. Yeah. And that's it, goodbye. Okay, so one is faced with the event of the nothing happening. And the reason that is terrifying is because why would the nothing that is happening engender terror? Why wouldn't it engender boredom or, I don't know, laughter, or why terror? Yeah.
Maybe because you accept it, you allow it to be part of your world.
But why would that engender terror? Why wouldn't you just want to stick your tongue out at it, or go, I could do that, walk away? Why is that supposed to be unsettling? Because the first claim that Lyotard, that Dane is correctly addressing and is correctly pointed out, is that somehow this painting makes you want to stay still, look at it, become terrified, but at the same time slightly delighted, because the terror is contained in this invisible sort of wall, this invisible space, or what could be called lack. Use that advisedly, Kate. Between, because why does that engender terror? Why does it engender, like, I don't know, jouissance or something? Kate?
It might be because it's related to death.
Yes.
It may
And
like
why
you-
would seeing a trip of paint or a strip of paint in any way be related to death?
My understanding of it, although not in relation to this painter, who I don't know, is that you get confused as to what's animate and what's inanimate, and that frightens you, and it somehow involves you. You become inanimate if something's animate.
Well, Lyotard's argument is
Yes, go
Yeah.
on. It's really good.
it's the sense of is this all there is? If
Mm.
this is it, and you're staring at it, and there's nothing more. It doesn't go any further. It's dead, and if you're there and there's nothing with you, you are dead as well.
Yeah.
But because you've got that distance, you can begin to peel that back, and from the terror generates that sublime.
It's a bit like Roscoe's paintings, I think. So,
Yeah, Rothko would be an example.
Same period, same.
yeah.
Would Lee's work, as you've understood it to be explained, which may or may not, because it's not generating terror, right?
How's it?
I would like it to be.
No. No, not really, no. No.
Mm.
I think quite the opposite, in fact.
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, is it generating some sort of,
Pleasure, really.
yeah, pleasure, yeah.
Yeah, but, obviously it's visual pleasure, I guess, but a combination of visual and haptic kind of pleasure is kind of something. It does.
Your work creates resonance, I think,
Yes.
by the sound of it, which is, that's like a dissonance, really. It's like,
Okay, we're getting somewhere now. So I guess the question that Dane is, stroke Jean-Francois is raising is, do you have to have something negative like terror, fright, whatever, in order to generate pleasure, in order to generate the sublime? Or could you do what Lee is talking about, which is having something generated that is pleasurable?
There is another element in that text of Lyotard. He's saying that the sublime, yes, implies this differentiation, not differentiation, but this difference that is not decomposable, but it's the object that generates the sublime feeling changes over time. So he makes a point that Barnum-Newman paintings generate a sublime feeling that is different than the Kantian sublime directly.
And what is the Kantian sublime?
The Kantian sublime is more related to the fact that the sensation does not directly, cannot directly relate to the ideas of reason. So there is an incomposability of the two. It should go first to the categories of intellect, but instead it refers immediately to the ideas that are projections of infinity. So there is one single instance in the present that tries to fit in and contain or build a picture of the infinity of some possibility. And that's impossible, so there is a continuity back and forth, back and forth.
So, oh, the agony, oh, the ecstasy.
Yes, that's a problem there. But I'm also thinking, precisely because Lyotard brings up this point, and about what Kate just said about finding something that is dead but seems alive, puts us in doubt. I don't know if you saw yesterday on both Guardian and Independent, there was a news about Google buying Boston Dynamics, which builds robots for the American Army. And they sometimes are goofy, but mostly they are really spooky. Besides that, they are for spying and killing us. But they built little things that look like toys, and they behave and they move completely autonomously. They walk, they run, they scuttle about. Especially the simplest one is there's one that has got 6 funny flaps that make it move above any sort of ground and goes everywhere. And moves and doesn't have a front or a back or up or down. If it flips over, it keeps going in the same direction. You've got the gyroscope, so it knows the direction. And if it falls and it goes like this, it keeps continuing, and then if it falls like that, it continues. So it looks alive, as you know it's a machine, it looks alive. So you have
So it's uncanny in that.
completely.
But is it sublime?
Well, I think that there is an element there that brings in this problem. Oscar last week, is a shame he's not here, brought up the notion of technological sublime, referring to Mario Costa, even though an Italian scholar of aesthetics. And I thought that this is precisely an example. The sublime that evolves with the technologies or the first material that generates the feeling.
So ectoplasm, we know, at least from those images that Grace has shown us before, they just look completely fake. I mean, you almost like, how can these people believe this? And so the real question is, since they can't possibly really believe it, and since they're not all in one big conspiracy theory, although maybe on some level, it seems to me that there's something about the sublime going on that makes one want to suspend belief and at the same time use some kind of rationality that doesn't quite work or it overworks, and it's this overshooting or undershooting, and one's being caught in this moment that generates the sublime, and that's just a wonderful feeling. Oh, the ecstasy, it's a wonderful feeling, not in the fact that you just feel floaty and wonderful, but it's that the pain of it makes you feel wonderful. It's a very specific SM, sadomasochistic relationship that he's pointing out here. So continue.
Yeah, well, just to add to that, Lyotard's main differentiation with Kant is the element of time, that there is no time for Kant is the background with which everything else plays there, but his interpretation of is it happening, has to happen, has to gain access to time and via the artwork for its artiness.
Okay, what does that mean?
I'm not for it being an art object, it has to, well, not really an art object at all, as he goes on to say, but in it being art, it has to ask the question of time, how to go back before that pre-conceptualization, before anything becomes concrete within it, to ask what is happening here, is it still happening, when does it stop happening, and that's...
So as long as it's a gerund, which is an ing form of a verb, that's what a gerund is, making, running, jumping, inging, as long as there's an ing in there, that he's suggesting brings on the sublime? So it's not, or to put it slightly differently, it's not about time, it's about timing.
Is it about action then?
No,
Or interaction?
Because it takes itself out of the time with which it's in, and it goes on later to say the art object. I mean, eventually when you put it in the museum, it won't be sublime, it won't invoke the terror, it won't address what it was addressing. Later he says that the avant-garde, contemporary art, has to be able to realise that painting art is an infinite game, it can go on, but once you put it in the museum, it stops. It's not happening anymore.
So in other words, its tactility or its haptic aspect is crushed the moment it is put on display.
Yeah. In a sense, it loses its relation to its possibility of being its possibility of addressing the infinite possibilities.
You know that's not right yet.
No.
Because obviously if you're looking at Barnett Newman's painting and it's dripping, and you're looking at it not in your living room, but in a gallery, it's in a gallery, and therefore by definition of what it's just been said, it ought not to be invoking this terror dread moment, but it is invoking this. So
It does talk about the museum as a thing later on, I think. Okay, in a second.
okay, so we'll just mark that as a paradox at the moment, because one of the most important things that you're saying at the moment is this thing called the happening, which is, to speak about it in Lauren's vernacular, or Lauren stroke Lyotard, it's event. But this event is a ing. It's a gerund.
It's got to have the question mark, you say, otherwise if it's not indeterminate, it loses something.
Forgive us.
Not that again.
I'm not saying anything.
See, I think my rattle that I'm writing about is indeterminate, and therefore leads us into the sublime.
But
Way into your article. Quick, write that down. It's going to be co-authored by the entire PhD seminar.
Lyotard makes another point at the beginning of the text where he distinguishes between the quid and the quod. And quid is the thing.
Yeah.
It.
Like quid pro quo.
And it's there, and quod is the fact that the thing is. And the fact that
QUA or QUAD?
QUOD.
Oh, the quad. Okay, right, okay.
No, these two Latin pronouns. But and I found that particularly interesting because the fact that the thing is the event that Lauren speaks about all the time. The fact that something is
You should have a little cheerleading thing.
I don't know why there is something that is nothing, which is the returning question that has come back into seminars quite a few times now. And
Except for Hegel would be why is there nothing rather than something.
yes, but since we never read that.
Oh, sorry. Don't confuse you with that.
And Lyotard brings up time directly in this text by pointing out at the fact that the strip or the reaping to an otherwise homogeneous surface creates, because in abstract expressionists we're all working about the problem of figure and background and painting, and how to blur them and then how to resurrect it. So this single cut or single line creates depth where there is none, and creates interruption where there is none. And already one is entering this loop. One
Creates a fold.
Creates a fold. And then the way I understood it is Lyotard then links it with time, because the point that he sees is that the question raised by the paintings and the feeling one has is the question, what if time stops? What if the repetition of there is something no longer happens? And I linked it with what we read in the other book of Lyotard, when he points out that it's more...
The other book meaning the discourse... right.
The social analytical sublime. Well, in the first chapter, which we read last week, he really insists on the difference between subject and subjective movement from Kant. And he says that the sublime feeling, like all other aesthetic judgments, are subjective. And all these subjective feelings point toward a vanishing point of subject, which is never reached. But as long as they continue repeating themselves, one can hope and trust that the subject is there somewhere. So there is a sort of feeling of safety and security, or ground. But if they stop repeating, then one sees there is. And that's it's a much more dark sublime, I think, that you're trying to do.
Right, okay, so the kind of sublime that Lee would be talking about would be a more playful version.
Yes.
But usually when one talks about the sublime, there is something dark about it. You know, and even in your work, it has to be dark.
Actually, because the sublime, I guess if you're talking about sublime, the sublime will happen when the person goes up and touch it and interacts with it, and they kind of get some feedback. But then thinking about the way people do interact with it, it is a kind of a playful. Then as the thing starts moving and shifting, and it does vibrate, it does actually almost become a painful experience for them. So, but then there's kind of a pleasurable aspect that they get from that pain of seeing it, because it, you know, it's kind of it does very much interfere with the way which your vision and kind of, because everything's moving around and at different, it vibrates at different rates, and it is a painful experience, and some people just can't
Deal with it.
deal with it.
Yeah. So if you get caught in the thing about the sublime that Dane is like working out, or Dane Lyotard is working out, is that you kind of get caught. And you get caught for an instant, so the time is important here. How long is this instant that you get caught in? You know, without trying to sound overly zen about the whole thing. And while you're in the instant, is it instant wide, long, short, fat? What is this instant? Could you say that the instant is a dimension?
This might be completely wrong, but isn't this what Lyotard, is it, talks about in temporal superpositions, where we all experience time differently, and he has a concept of vertical time and horizontal time, and that in certain instances, usually when pleasure is part of it, it feels extended because
So it's
we have such a
it's
sensuous kind of
lateral.
interaction with something. And I just wondered if that's similar to how we experience a piece of artwork, that it holds you in kind of a moment of, when we talk about kind of a moment of fascination, but with everyone it's kind of, you have a different experience with it, and that alters your idea of time and how long you spend with it. Or am I completely unrelated?
No, you're right. No, that's right. No,
Well, it's like a moment of ecstasy, really. Isn't it?
Bachelor, Gaston Bachelor. Poetic space. What would you say?
It's like a moment of ecstasy where you're sort of, it's different for each person, I think, where you're held there in the moment, really, isn't it? It's, sort of
It's different for each person because each person is embodied in a different body,
yeah.
right? So, but I'm worried that everybody's bringing this back to experience or one's opinion or something like that, and be careful of that move. Yeah, Kate?
It's identity that interests me. The sublime somehow alters your identity, and that's its political radicalism that I'm interested
How does
in.
that do that?
Because of this business that Matteo was talking about with the subjective and subject and subjective. In the sublime, you're in your body, but you lose your ego. And it changes you.
Maybe you don't lose your ego, but you lose your superego.
You lose both.
You lose everything.
Because you've only got your id.
You only have your id. Well, all right.
Yeah. You're in the id.
Okay, but getting somewhere here. Yeah, Mark.
I'm not convinced. I'm
Okay.
not even sure what the sublime is really meant to feel like. I'm not sure I know what the sublime is. I'm not sure I know what pain is. I'm not sure I know what pleasure is. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that I'm standing in front of the Barnett Newton painting that anything sublime is going to go on like that. I'm just not convinced there is a sublime. I'm not. You know, you talk about experience. I'm not really. What's the experience that I would think of as, you know, something sublime? I'm really not guessing the sublime at the moment. It's not happening.
Is Barnett Newman trying to create sublime?
In the dark, not the sublime.
Yeah, because didn't we say something last week that you can't try and create sublime?
So your work does that.
What?
Your work does that.
Make sublime or tries to create a sublime.
Yeah.
Both.
Both.
But I wouldn't say I'm not trying to.
No, I'm not saying you intentionally are doing it.
Yeah.
The work is doing that.
I'm not even convinced the sublime in the Kantian sense, really, because the idea that the idea of reason that doesn't fix with the sensibility and stuff is the idea of kind of unity. I'm not even sure that that idea is something. The idea that the thing has to then engage with some kind of number in a schema or something within a symbolic.
What do you think, Dane?
I'm not convinced on what the sublime is meant to be.
You're more supportive last week. You are more supportive last
You see what? Breathing there for a while, not saying anything. I've got something brewing.
But how would you respond to
going to find the sublime somewhere, it's within the artwork and its power to make someone, a subject, submit to whatever's happening internally within within what's going on within it.
Well, I mean, okay, so what that made me think of was, we have this crayon, okay? If I go like this, no, sorry, I was trying to hit you. But when it was falling, right as it fell, I hit it. Okay, was that moment the sublime? Did I catch it in mid-run? Was that the sublime? Because that's what I heard it being said to start with. So, you're standing there, is that the sublime? You know, when you, that one moment, is that going to be the sublime? No. So, sorry, everybody duck.
You're scary today.
That's right. Sorry. So you're looking at this piece, and something happens that draws you into it, but the despondency or the terror is that the drip it just seems so meaningless, and therefore it's the meaninglessness that causes the deep-seated depression, that causes the deep-seated terror, that makes you realize, well, it could be worse, because I could be that drop of paint, or that drip of paint. In fact, maybe I am a drip of paint, but I can leave, and therefore you break the moment of the sublime. So in other words, is the sublime the thing that is happening in mid-run, even though it doesn't literally have to be moving? Like, that's why your sculptures make sense. I mean, they're not running all over the place. But that's why moving also works. They can actually be moving. So what is, before Mark continues objecting to the sublime, what literally is meant by this thing sublime? We know it's an overwhelming, we know it's something that's caught in mid-run and might dislodge identity or might not. I mean, it's like if you have an epiphany. If you know what an epiphany is, does everybody know what an epiphany is? EP something. I-P-H-A-N-Y, yeah, epiphany. So epiphany is like you're and then suddenly, boom, something happens. And it changes the way you think. That's an epiphany. That, like you're walking along and boom, it's something that, focuses you, and you, a switch flips. Okay, is that the sublime?
No,
Okay.
no.
Dane going like this, we got Mattia going like this. Okay, no, why not?
Because that's just a moment. It's not.
Changes your log. Sorry. I mean, Kate was saying that that the sublime changes your identity. Well, an epiphany could do that.
Yeah, but the sublime has to have an element of what we're talking about, poetics, doesn't it?
It has to have an element of holding.
Yeah, grabbing, and what we were talking about this morning about sort of grasping something, bringing it towards you. It's that moment has got to be.
Yeah, Kant distinguishes like with them.
Who does?
Kant.
Oh, Kant. Oh, he said hat. I think it's hat. Sorry.
He sort of distinguishes between like the apprehending of the mathematical sublime, in contrast to like the Kant comprehension of the intuition with the dynamical sublime. So the apprehending aspect relates to the sort of the bit where sort of the imagination is suddenly found to be inadequate, because so in a way that's the sort of identity being disrupted. So that's one way that the sublime gets aroused. But to me it seems like the dynamical sublime is what interests Lyotard more, because of how like although Kant is sort of rejecting like his pleasure and displeasure aspect, it sort of it wants to sort of sterilise the kind of the sort of it wants to sort of sterilise some kind of aspect of it. On the other hand, I think this is why it also interests Lyotard in that this aspect of the state and the information at the same time. So so in a way, because Lyotard is sort of moving away, or moved away from the phenomenology of experience, so this sublime from the silence, where it's.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because I lost what you were saying. What I'm trying to get at, or the question I'm trying to get, don't use the word sublime in discussing the sublime. So, what is the sublime without using the word sublime in the sentence?
It's the suspension of an economy of representation. That is,
Write that down, everybody. Suspension of economy of representation.
That is the distances of the dimension, the thickness of representation, the ego and the super-ego became suspension.
We'll talk later about your project.
Maybe tomorrow.
Yes, yes.
And the layering of ego, superego, or the distribution of senses, intellect, reason, all these spacing that is in place that allows us to move about, make sense, and understand and predict.
So if one is being suspended, or if there is a suspension of the economy of representation, which is what you're suggesting, okay, then how does that either bring on terror or pleasure or any of these things? How does that work?
Well, because it's a collapse where the awareness of representation goes down to level zero. We were discussing before how the work of Andrew might generate a sublime reaction, or at least
the work of Andrew.
Yes, you said that before, and I thought very much of when one works as an artist and really gets into the work, one is not aware of the time. In other words, it sounds like a way of saying it, but it is absolutely true that one does not retain the same awareness of the amount of time flowing. The intensity changes entirely. I don't see terror in it, but it's a kind of experience or feeling, as Kant and Lyotard refer to back and forth, that is entirely different than the one that is all distributed and under control, the one that one can see from outside.
Could you find anger in it? Is there any emotion in it?
Oh yes, plenty, but they are not. They're not.
Just not terror.
No, there could be terror as well in some instances, but they happen without being named. And then one obviously stops, looks at it.
Okay,
and
now we're
rather
getting
than,
somewhere.
It's the nameless something.
It's a nameless something. It's close. What's it called in Adorno? So close.
The unsayable,
Don't look at your notes. Don't look at your notes.
Oh, don't look at my notes. Okay, the unsayable.
No helping.
I can understand it anyway.
That's hilarious.
Suggesting
the unsayable ends with an ing.
Well, it's unsayable something, but it is the unsayable something. Okay.
The unsayable something. Okay. And the unsayable something is unsayable. Why?
It's the bit left out. It's the part that.
But it's not so left out that it's lacking in a sense.
It's left over.
Sorry.
It's left over from the ground, isn't it? It's the part that's just not. It's in the centre, but it's on the edge as well. So.
Okay, that makes
No sense.
it does make sense because I know what you're talking about, but it's you're describing your picture. You're not doing the analysis of it, the analytic. You're getting there. Dane, what are you going to say?
Can I add one thing to what?
Okay, of course.
I'm not now suggesting that I am explaining what either Lyotard or Kant say about the sublime, but if after Lyotard interpretation in modern time of the sublime, one is allowed to push it a bit further. it might be unsayable, but it's not an unsayable something that is left out in the other limit.
Yeah.
It is the fact that one reaches the limit, the horizon of what can be said, and one is on the edge. And there isn't anything on the other side. And in this sense, yes, it is still close to Lyotard, because it's wondering what if time stops flowing. So I would find myself at the end of things.
Oh,
So,
but it's
yes.
not that perhaps the one is on the edge. That's the. But it's more that that's the moment when it is happening. Or so that's the is happening. So it's not on the edge.
No, but the problem that Lyotard brings up is that what if
'Cause it's actually the
there
limit
is
that's
happening no
missing.
longer happens? What if the fact that something is, which is not a thing, but its existence,
You have a black hole.
no longer, exactly. So it's a collapse of all the economies of representation of all the distances, of all the possible equations.
But it's a collapse without totally collapsing. So it's the moment before the absolute collapse.
That's the sublime.
That's the sublime.
Yeah.
So in other words, let's pretend this is the universe. You know, I've got the whole universe in my hands. So I feel a song coming on. Okay, now this is the universe. The edge of the universe is as big as is the universe. The universe spreads out, and where it stops spreading is the edge of the universe. But it's not because there's something beyond the edge. It's because there is just the edge. And therefore the sublime is taking one to the so-called edge, except it's not an edge like a profound edge like this. It is as big as it can be without it having anything beyond it. So in other words, think of a cloud. The edge of a cloud is not really literally, you know, this continuous moment, piece of marble or something like that. It's not an edge like that. It is how much it expands to fill, that's its edge.
It's like Mandelbrot's edge. It's like the
It's
algorithm.
Mandelbrot.
Yeah, fractals. And
It's a fractal edge.
Yeah.
It's a slice. Now, does everybody understand that sentence? Yeah, Dan.
Kind of. I'm just curious, can you prepare for the sublime? Can you see it coming?
If you could see it, yes?
No.
No.
No. That's a 50%, right? Yes?
No, I think I think it's just like clicked in my head. I think I understand what it is now.
Oh,
Just
right.
be based on when I saw a painting once. I think I experienced the sublime. I'd seen painting as in a photograph before in a book, but then when I saw it, I
Well, I
experienced
did.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Like,
Like, you could have the sublime without experiencing it.
yeah.
How?
No, but
How could
The
you?
sublime is the experience.
How could you? And I went into
That's-
Roscoe.
The sublime is the experience.
Yeah.
You can't have it without the experience.
Exactly.
Well, no, in a sense, like the mathematical sublime would be the suspension of the economy of representation, and then the dynamical sublime might be the suspension of the economy of phenomenology. So the suspension of experience.
it's not the
Whenever you
object
have
of the
experience,
sublime.
you still
It's-
there's that border, there's that inner outer sort of. You're still sort of refraining yourself.
But you have to physically experience it.
Well, the thing is, sort of like there's sort of that aspect to the figural where it sort of happens, but doesn't like this is what I'm thinking about this word aesthetic sort of. I'm quite interested in this notion, this sort of notion.
Don't lose it, don't lose it. You're now I'm going to throw out something just to help you here, because it's very good to see you with your little boxing gloves on. Excellent. Well done. Okay. But then you backed away, but still, you got off of the ropes, and that was very good. Lyotard has a book out, actually it's a lecture, which is called, which you've seen before, called The Assassination of Experience by Painting. Now, think about that title, The Assassination of Experience by Painting, to the degree to which, whether or not you want to make a debate or not about this, I don't want to talk about the article itself. If it's true that the sublime is experience, and if it's true that painting creates the sublime, why would he have a title that would say something like, or in fact says, the assassination of experience by painting. How is it that painting can in fact assassinate, get rid of, not deal with experience? It's kind of what Dane was saying when he first opened his lecture seminar.
Is it to do with the fact that this is all linking to visual? Given visual or something?
No, because it doesn't have to be visual. It can be haptic. It can be haptic in the sense of being tactilely arousing. Hence, sitting on your marble, as it were. Yes.
I suppose I was thinking like this thing with the word indeterminate and indeterminateness. Sort of, it depends how you take that word, whether you take that as like Deleuze has that bit where he refers to Hegel, which you brought up once in the seminar, where he contrasts it to do with Hegel, which Mark just showed in about cows seen on a dark night, and the night was swarming with difference. So that you can say, you can take this indeterminateness as sort of somewhere with difference, as a radical difference is there, which is like it's happening, which isn't about experience. Or you can take it the other way, which is still sort of trapped way, where indeterminateness is more like a sort of a nothingness, in a sense of like a sort of just a not, but sort of antithesis. So that would be like the Hegelian, maybe, as opposed to sort of taking it in indeterminateness, where it's like a sawing of difference.
I would like to be inside your head sometimes, because I would like to see those pathways that you're going on. Because you're right, what you're saying, but I'm not sure if people.
If you talk about the nothingness, then basically, the sort of negation. No.
You're talking about the event.
Yes. I mean, so I'm trying to sort of say the indeterminateness is happening, which is the silence in Newman's paintings of the sublime in that sense.
The indeterminate is it is happening.
Is happening.
Is happening.
The indeterminate is what? Is the question, is it happening?
I like the is happening.
Not the question.
It's hard to get rid of the it. But maybe that's not.
Well, I mean, in New York, they started. How do you think that came up? The notions of the happenings. Happenings were fluxus moments of things going on, and this was all part of this sort of mood with Barnett Newman and the whole crowd. This is where this is coming from. Anyway, they just did take out the word it. In fact, they took out the word is as well, and in fact, they took out the question mark.
Yeah.
In the end, they just had the happenings.
Happening,
And that became fluxus.
I'm trying to build backward from what you said. Alan Kaplan, who's the artist of that, went on and wrote a lot also about the overlapping of performing as in performing on stage and performing as in performing a task. So that he was doing performances for himself, or just performing without needing the public, shaving in the morning, and so on. And then with other people, he developed these ideas about somebody took on the political career as performing, and nobody ever knew he was performing. The mayor of a town upstate New York, 3 decades ago. So there is an element. So if there is a doubling of the act and itself that you need. So you have the happening.
The building,
The doubling.
The doubling. No, and there is a reflection or reflective judgment that goes on to link it back to Kant. So the thought must be feeling itself, and you keep having these going back and forth and back and forth. And as long as it is happening, the fact that it is happening is in itself marvelous. Spinoza said the world, and the fact that the world happens is God, so it collapses. The problem of the sublime is when you realize that these doubling, or you suspend this doubling. So
You suspend the doubling. Yeah.
And then for a moment you see that the fact that it is happening is not guaranteed, and it could not be happening. And that's absolutely. This is what Lyotard says.
Can you repeat that, because we're going to link it to this rattle in a minute.
well, there is the fact that what is happening might not be happening, or better realizing this when the continuous folding over or reflection, doubling over of experience and experiencing the experience, fulfilling itself. This is what it's a repetition that is a linear time that Lyotard refers to, and or that it points to a subject whose unity is transcendental to Kant. But realizing at a certain point, thanks to an art object or a natural event outside, that these repetition might interrupt, is what they refer to as sublime.
Okay. What's your quote, Dane? Yes, it makes it. Because we'll get back to the rattle. I think we have to get back to your.
There's one on page 96 where he talks about how art begins to break representation via sublime.
Okay, go for it.
At stake in these poetic theological debates is the status of works of art. Are they copies of some ideal model? Can reflection on the more perfect examples yield rules of formation that determine their success in achieving what they want, that is, persuasiveness and pleasure? Can understanding suffice for this kind of reflection? By mediating on the theme of sublimity and of indeterminacy, mediation about works of art imposes a major change on techno and the institutions linked to it. Academies, schools, masters and disciples, taste, the enlightened public, made of princes and courtiers. It is the very question or destiny of works which is being questioned. The predominance of the idea of techno placed works under a multiple regulation, that of the model, taught in the studios, schools and academies, that of the taste shared by the aristocratic public, that of a purposiveness of art, which was to illustrate the glory of a name, divine or human, to which was linked the perfection of some cardinal virtue or other. The idea of the sublime disrupts this harmony. Let us magnify the features of this disruption. Under Diderot's pen, techno becomes la petite technique, mere trivial technique. The artist ceases to be guided by a culture which made of him the sender and master of a message of glory. He becomes, insofar as he is a genius, the involuntary addressee of an inspiration come to him from an I know not what. Speech marks. The public no longer judges according to the criteria of a taste ruled by the tradition of shared pleasure. Individuals unknown to the artists, people, read books, go through the galleries or the salons, crowd into the theatres and the public concerts. They are prey to unforeseeable feelings. They are shocked, admiring, scornful, indifferent. The question is not that of pleasing them by leading them to identify with a name and to participate in the glorification of its virtue, but that of surprising them. The sublime, writes Boileau, is not strictly speaking something which is proven or demonstrated, but a marvel which seizes one, strikes one, and makes one feel. The very imperfections, the distortions of taste, even ugliness, have their share in the shock effect. Art does not imitate nature, it creates a world apart, ein Zwischenwelt, as Paul Klee would say, ein Nebenwelt, one might say, in which the monstrous and the formless have their rights because they can be sublime.
I had a little feedback. That's fantastic. Okay, it is very powerful. Yeah, it is very powerful. Can you read that part again? Not the whole part, but let's say the last 5 sentences or so.
Tell us the page.
96.
Can you go from art does not imitate?
It's on page 96, second paragraph, and it goes to page 97.
Yeah.
The public no longer judges according to the criteria of a taste ruled by the tradition of shared pleasure. Individuals unknown to artists, of people, read books, go through the galleries of the salons, crowd into the theatres and the public concerts. They are prey to unforeseeable feelings. They are shocked, admiring, scornful, indifferent. The question is not that of pleasing them by leading them to identify with a name and to participate in the glorification of its virtue, but that of surprising them. The sublime, writes Boileau, is not strictly speaking something which is proven or demonstrated, but a marvel which seizes one, strikes one, and makes one feel. The very imperfections, the distortions of taste, even ugliness, have their share in the shock effect. Art does not imitate nature, it creates a world apart. Ein Weichenwelt, as Paul Klee will say, Ein Nebenwelt, one might say, in which the monstrous and the formless have their rights because they can be sublime.
It borders on spectacle as well. It's quite interesting.
Does that convince you, Mark?
The sublime. I was going to say something about the sublime. I think, from my experience, I would talk here now what I think about the sublime. There's a tunnel between, Stuart would know this, there's a tunnel because he lived in the same part of Kent, between Seven Oaks and Tunbridge. It's about a minute on a train travelling at whatever speed, so you can imagine it's quite a long tunnel. Christmas 1984 Boxing Day, in Oxford, I know the trains aren't running, so I walk along the railway line to Seven Oaks. This is about 3 miles. No trains. No trains. There's that tunnel. I think I'll go through that tunnel. So I've got a little time to talk. What do you ever stare at the sky for? Rolling their eyes.
Well, you did live. We know that.
I'm an artist. This is my art. So I start to go through this tunnel, and of course, outside the train, it's suddenly full of water. Coming out through the roof. It's extremely noisy, extremely wet, extremely dangerous because, I'm just guessing there's no train. I'm guessing the electricity lines. Anyway, so we go through this tunnel. I'm supposed to get quite a way through, and I'm beginning to wonder where the end is, so there's a kind of temporal distortion, if you like. And eventually we do get through it.
When you say we,
me,
is that the royal we?
Yeah, we do get
You and your experience.
No, that's fine. I just wasn't sure if there was another we in there.
Now that, to me, speaks maybe, I don't know. What does it mean to be non-determinate? What's determinate? It's already a bivariant logic, so already there's problems with the language. Anyway, that might mean something about pleasure and pain and the sublime and questions, but that's not where this conversation took its roots from. It originated in paintings and Rothko stuff, and that's not what I think. I think my sublime is more something to do with the event of the sublime, of the terrifying and the distortions of time. In the sense of that, there is an end, but I'd quite like the end to arrive sooner than later. So, is it art? I don't know. 3 days later, no, that's not the story. But anyway, so, but no, that's how things like that.
Yeah, no, that's why I was beginning.
Why have I'm the only one been through it? There's a
No,
playground out there.
Because I was writing yesterday, and it's about on an icy cliff in Scotland, getting so far up with I was walking with a guy called Mad Dave. He's not Chris.
Clue in the name.
But yes, he was a deaf hand with ice axes and crampons, so and I followed him so far, and then I looked down. I was going to write down Wile E. Coyote because there's something of that in there as well. That's sort of running off a cliff, only when you look down. But there was something about that real experience of out there in the world. It's almost like the talk of the art part is like sort of sublime for the couch potato generation. There's a sort of safety to it.
So you mean that looking at the painting is the sublime for the couch potato?
Yeah, possibly.
So
I was kind of lacking with Mark.
But then you're saying it's got to be a kind of near-death experience.
I wasn't near-death, but it's still frightening. I don't know.
Well,
but I just wondered, or whether, I'm not saying it's wrong, but there's this big shift in where the sublime sits.
It's God.
I think.
Yeah, because I had a moment like that when I was in Nepal, and I went on a.
Did you say Nepal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nepal.
No,
I thought you said Nepal.
I did too.
I've had a few in Nepal, but this was in Nepal, and we were staying in Pokhara, and my kids were really young, like 2 and 4, and we decided to go on a pony trek, because we thought that would be fun, because it'd be easy, because they'll just lead us up, and we won't have to walk too much. And we had this guy called Krishna, and his name was, he was our guide.
This guy called Krishna?
Yeah. This guy called Krishna was our guide, but his name was a complete misnomer, right? He was not peaceful at all. He was quite a sadist, and he wanted to take us as far up as he could, and it was the most terrifying experience of my life, because I don't like horses or ponies anyway. So I was sat on this pony with a tiny child who was saying all the way through, I want to get off, I want to get off, I want to get off, I want to get off. And I was thinking, so do I hate this. And we were like at the edge of a cliff, like literally at the edge of a cliff. And he didn't lead us, we just followed him. And then he took us so fast down the other side that I thought we were going to die. And at the end, I was just kind of like, wow, I've survived that, I can survive anything. But it was that moment where I was absolutely terrified out of my wits. And the only reason I didn't scream was because I had a tiny child between my legs.
The difference is I think you were in danger. I don't
That's right, you were actually.
No, but I wasn't in danger because they were leading us. So technically.
No, you could have fallen off the
Yeah, you
horse.
could have fallen. No, Mark is
No, but
bringing
he
up
was
another
there all
point.
the time.
And I think he's quite right, and he's the problem I have with Lyotard.
He is the prophet.
No. It is the problem I have with Lyotard, the problem that Mark has pointed out with his example, and with many other authors. So when they speak about art, they always think of art as something that has happened, and then there is the public. And nobody thinks that we are making it. And the sublime belongs to us. It's in the making process, so in the experience that, you said ironically or sarcastically, this is my art, don't roll your eyes. But that's precisely the point. And
it is your art. I was ecstatic that you said that word.
When I was saying before that moment of the period of time while working, making art, all breaks down, and we are just one with the work. That I think is not what Lyotard is saying or Kant are saying directly, but is what we can look at as sublime experience now for us.
So you're saying the audience can't experience
yes,
sublime?
but it's
a different type of
forgetting.
It's the couch potato.
Forgetting.
That's harsh. I feel that's very harsh.
Yeah, like I agree in the sense that I'm much happier sitting on my marble on my own in my studio than having some work in a gallery and other people looking at it.
But it's like through the work is being encountered in different ways. When you're in the process of creating
yes.
the work, and then when you encounter it, a Barnett Newman that's so many years old and he doesn't exist, physically anymore. That's a different encounter because you're looking at something that's being.
But then,
can you experience the sublime a second time with the same painting?
Well, say you had this moment of sublime, and then you said, "Oh, that's a really good idea to write," and then you wrote that, and then you go back 2 hours later, it's complete crap.
Yeah, like
what the writing or the.
So.
Like for me it was a Robert Mangold painting, and I didn't know what to do. I kind of stood in front of it, and it changed. I don't want to say my life, but there was something.
Your identity.
Yeah, just something went a bit
But
wrong.
does that create some kind of banality if you wanted to
Yeah, I've not seen it again. I don't know if I want to see it again, because I don't know if I'd have the same.
Then you have the expectation
But
of
I
that
have certainly,
experience then, don't you?
I have certainly sat in front of paintings, and mainly Van Gogh in particular, and the Cedars at to talk about being really stereotypic here, sitting in front of that, and that used to make me, probably still do, cry. I found it so powerful. Now, whether or not that is having a sublime moment or not, I think that we are talking about the same thing as whether or not you're walking in the middle of the tunnel, or whether or not you're sitting in front of a thing that's stuck on a wall somewhere. That it doesn't matter whether or not you're moving or it's moving, and that's why I was saying that the dynamic has to be happening. Somehow a dynamic is produced, and if it doesn't get produced, it is the couch potato problem. But if it does get produced, then it's not the couch potato problem. Then it's something else is going on. That's why it doesn't happen that often.
But I think it's also when they subvert something. Like when I saw Amish Kapoor's, I don't know if anyone saw the wax train in the RCA, that was the most brilliant use of the RCA, I think, because what he did was leave wax residue all through, and I loved it. That for me was the sublime. I stood there and watched.
See,
sorry,
I
it's
disagree
not
with that.
sublime.
No?
I think Nish Kapoor's got a couple of pieces that I don't really like his work, but maybe closer for me. Like there's a one where he does a pigment and it's like a void.
pigment, yeah.
And you're looking into, it's a box, so it's big, but you're looking in and there's literally,
There are
you
no
can't
dimensions
see.
in the box,
Yeah, there's like that. Or when you went into the RA, the first one, the big sort of, kind of looked like a big vagina that kind of went in.
Oh yeah, I like that one. Yeah.
And
yeah.
you look in and it's just black, and you know there's a back to it, but you can't see the back. Whereas for wax, I just felt it was making a mess.
No, but
it's
I
not
like
it's not
that.
a single example.
Yeah,
Liking it a lot is not
yeah,
sublime.
Can I have a go
Yeah.
at the definition?
Yeah, as long as you leave out identity.
Okay. I think the sublime has to alter our relationship with time and space.
Yes.
And it does that by getting in between cause and effect. We feel safe and we know where we are if we can see the relationship between cause and effect, and if cause comes first and effect comes after. If we experience effects without understanding their causes, as in a rattle, for instance.
You really want this group to help you with that period. Yeah.
No, I want to help the group.
Oh, sorry.
Then we are decentered, and we are in our bodies because we need to realign cause and effect, and that will make us feel safe. When cause and effect are out of sync, time becomes radicalized. And the way that space is radicalized in the sublime is to take one of Kant's reflexive headings, is the inner-outer thing. In the sublime, we're unsure whether it's inside us or outside us, whether we are self or other. The boundary between the two has gone somehow in the sublime. So
if a work does that, or if a moment does that, that is being in the
then
sublime.
you are, the way you kind of normally function in time and space, all your habitual stuff is altered permanently, forever. Because time and space are never going to be the same for you again. And all your habits
Well, they could be the same.
have been radicalized. And I think that...
For that moment.
But forever, for you, in your body.
One goes back to a normal time flow.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're changed by that sublime. Yes, you can
But
still
then-
walk
the thing
and
is,
talk,
traumatized in some kind of way, or is it trauma?
You've been radicalized. You've understood something that can't be put into words.
But that doesn't mean that you're changed forever, just like, or let's put it like this, then lots of things can change one forever, and you'd be this changing forever moment all the time. Seems, it's called growing. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't know the difference between that then. There's something else, it doesn't have to be overly dramatic, in the sense that, that you're forever X or forever Y.
Yeah.
It's the
That,
suspension.
I'd like to say that, I'm asserting it.
Okay.
Because I'm looking for the radicalism in tragedy. That's what I'm trying to prove at the moment, that it has a really important social function.
I think it does, but does that mean that in order for it to be important, it has to change your life forever?
I think that might be how it works, yeah. I think, but in changing your identity, it changes you, and therefore you see and experience things differently. Maybe not so differently that you can't walk down the street and go to work and catch the train and, you still function, but your perspective has been...
Okay, we'll go back to that.
But it's not because it's a revelation.
It's an interesting document.
It's precisely the opposite. There is no knowledge in the sublime. It is actually precisely the fact that there is no knowledge, and there is no.
And that's why I think the ectoplasm.
I think that's what you're saying about suspension. It's that still small point that T.S. Eliot goes on about, as a turning point. It's that moment, that suspended moment, isn't it?
It's a resonance or
Yeah.
attunement.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
attunement,
and
yeah.
that's why it comes into space and time, because it extends it or it shortens it depending. I still think it's a lot to do with experience, I think.
Yeah.
And that's why we're saying it's the unsayable something, because you can't contextualise it, you can't articulate it, you can't write about it, because that it's just impossible.
So it's just not going to be part of your thesis then?
There's a gap in the middle of the whole.
Just be a blank page.
That's right.
It functions like Jacques Rancière calls it parole muette, a silent speech, but then I find Heidegger's got a term for it. He calls it a telling silence. You know, all these philosophers have a term for it, and it all involves, you know, kind of just being flawed. But Jacques Rancière describes it as a punctum, which is Roland Barthes' term. And he says it's a deaf and silent obstacle to all forms of signification, which is why the parole muette, or the silent speech, which I think ectoplasm
I have a book
Might what?
called
Might not do it.
might do it.
Might do it, yes, of course.
If you,
Because the question is, why are these people fascinated on something that is so obviously not the case? They're not stupid. I mean, assuming that they're not stupid, assuming that they're not a conspiracy theory, like then there has to be some reason it, quote, works.
well, it does the cause-effect inner outer thing. It compromises all of those because of the trickery.
No, because of the argument, or because of the willingness to be ready to suspend belief. And because one is ready to suspend belief, that one is then put in a moment of suspension, allows one to experience the sublime, or to be in the sublime, and therefore it is the moment. And so when the seance is over, when it's all, you know, everything sort of falls down and goes back into place. But it's at that moment, because of the willingness is to be open to the suspension of belief, it's that which allows then for this ectoplasmic moment called sublime, which is in fact in fact, that's what the sublime is, it's ectoplasm. It all comes back to ectoplasm.
It can't be the sublime because it's a knowing suspension of belief.
It's a trick.
There's a certain element of understanding in that would make it not sublime.
But not for the people who are part of it. But not the, like, let's say not Mary or whatever her name was, that was actually wearing the cotton ball or whatever it was. But, you know, the people at the seance.
But I am slightly confused because the expression unsayable something keeps coming back. But in my understanding, there isn't something unsayable that one gets in touch with in the sublime experience. Sublime experience is precisely the experience of getting to the edge of what is sayable.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
It's a suspended moment.
when pattern and sensation won't stick, and there's a gap between them. It's just
Now you guys have to carry on. I have to clone myself and go to this thing in John Butler's office, and I'll come back. I just have to wave and say hello and leave. But can you carry on for a little bit before, okay?
I'll just go get some more then, Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I'm having a good time.
There's a lightning bolt. Sorry, I was you were talking about, you sort of put your hands like that and said something about seeing, and that for me, there was something in that.
it's a shaking.
But also you sort of place hands like that, and I think there's something in that I did, and it links to what you were saying, Grace, about that and some of the other things, that you can't go looking for the sublime. And it's there was something. There was a program on the radio a couple of months back about serendipity, and it talked about. I don't know if anybody heard it. The last bust of Serendip, and so it talked about what is serendipity. But there was something in there about accumulating and connecting, and it's like if you go looking for and accumulating, that's just greed, and it doesn't. But if you're sort of open, you sort of get these connections, and I think that was also coming back to David Abrams' idea of reciprocal encroachment, to do with how we are with the world, and it's almost like that is suspended somehow in the sublime. That something gets in the way of that reciprocity, or it sort of pushes it, I don't know, askew or something, just for a moment, or does that sort of fit in with?
I think it's the eye and the ear which are usually knitted up, and we're safe when they work in sync, and lip sync sort of typifies it, and then you disturb that lip sync so that the eye and the ear aren't giving you the same thing at the same time. They're giving you different, and then you're...
Because on this misalignment, I've got it in Italian, so I'll translate it. It's well, get that working. But in the analytic of the sublime, Kant says that sublime is an indirect pleasure, and it is that which is produced by the feeling of a temporary impediment, followed by a stronger release of vital forces, which is precisely what Freud says about the jokes.
Yeah.
They hold up all the mental energy, and then you don't know really which way to take, and then it goes all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So there is an element of, in this sense, is a breakdown of an economy as well. It's what you're saying.
Yeah, so maybe more I'm subscribing to the Kantian idea, because I thought again back to that cliff in Scotland, it's like if I went there now, I would know it would be dangerous, and I would just be shitting myself, and I wouldn't have quite that same sort of joy when I finally got to the level ground, maybe. And equally with the tunnel, it's like going back in, you kind of...
It's like when you remember having that experience with an artwork and you go back into the gallery, or anticipating having that already, so it's not, you're looking for the...
That's it, yeah.
Effect or
And
whatever.
it's like a sort of widow's wisp kind of thing, that you sort of look too much at it, so you have to sort of look at the corner of your eye or something.
In the play I'm writing about, there are different rattles all over the place, and then no, he's got a baby and he taps it against a plate to try and get its attention, so it's like a baby rattle. And then all sorts of other things rattle, and there's a tin of small ball rounds, but you can't always see what's rattling, or someone's asleep and their shield is rattling, and the movement is so infinitesimal that you don't know where it's coming from. And then this guy is asleep, and he's walking and talking in his sleep, and because he's been traumatized by something he's seen. And he's a wartime police officer, and so they've all got kind of automatic rifles, and they didn't realise he was asleep. They thought he was just fiddling about. And gradually in his sleep, he's accumulated all their rifles, and they realise, and then he starts aiming it at them, but he's asleep, and so they've all kind of run over the hill and hidden. And one of them is kind of creeping back to try and get these guns off this bloke because he's a complete liability, and one of them has the safety catch on, and it's all kind of logically organised, and one doesn't. And he tries to fire a rifle and it won't fire. So he's got one in each hand, and he looks down the barrel of the one that hasn't fired, and at the same time squeezes the one. So you just hear this gunshot, and for a moment you think he's shot himself in the face, but he hasn't. And it's terribly funny, because it's all the tension and then a comic release, and the audience pisses themselves laughing because he hasn't shot himself. But I think
that passage that is also in the only clip I've seen of The Silence of the Lambs, where they knock on the door and she's captive inside the house, and you think that she's going to be rescued, she's about to be killed or something. And the movie is built in such a way that, in all movies, not the tension is there, knocking on the door, trying to break the door down, she's inside about to be killed, and then when they break the door open, it's another house. And so there is a misalignment of time and space. It happens at the same time, but it's in two different places, and that it increases the terror. It depends what happens afterwards. Probably this goes in the direction of Kant and sublime, but it's very different from what Lyotard says, in my understanding. This misalignment.
There's a difference between Kant and Lyotard, is there?
Why? The more we read it, the more I think there really is.
what is it?
Well, the Lyotard is Heidegger. You know, he reads it through Heidegger. So the groundless ground is what the experience of the groundless ground for Lyotard is to boil it down to one. No, Mark seems to be up to the point.
You said that the experience of the groundless ground is the sublime.
Yeah, it's the sublime experience. I mean, experiences of the groundless ground is this thing that is always elusive and at the same time overwhelming. So it can never be.
Is it almost not more the realisation grounds? Because sort of, am I completely wrong in this? But from what we're saying, if ideally we're living in this groundless grounds. It's more the sort of the looking down.
Yes, but it is covered by a number of normal structures that about our day-to-day tasks without we don't think that we are standing on shaky grounds. But then, if you read many books this thick, you write on it, and you realize, oh, I'm standing on shaky grounds. But Lyotard takes that idea and moves it onto the aesthetic experience, which is very important to remember. The aesthetic judgment is, for Kant, is a reflective judgment. It's a judgment upon thought, not about something. You don't know anything from aesthetic judgment. You just feel the thought acting. It's a hollow, if you like, or undetermined kind of judgment. So Lyotard brings that into our filters it through Heidegger. That's the way I see it.
Explain about the time, Glenn.
Again, it still goes back to this question of, is it happening? There's no question of that in Kant. It happens, but within Lyotard, when you find yourself in a position where there might not there's every possibility that there is nothing more, there is nothing further to happen, and when you've got the opportunity to distance yourself and realise that it can happen, that it's still going on, is where the feeling of the sublime originates. I've got the definition used here. Might help. So on page 99. Here then is an account of the sublime feeling. A very big, very powerful object threatens to deprive the soul of any it happens, strikes it with astonishment. At lower intensities, the soul is seized with admiration, veneration, respect. The soul is thus dumb, immobilized, as good as dead. Art, by distancing this menace, procures a pleasure of relief, of delight. Thanks to art, the soul is returned to the agitated zone between life and death, and this agitation is its health and its life. For Burke, the sublime was no longer a matter of elevation, the category by which Aristotle defined tragedy, but a matter of intensification. Burke being the 18th century writer who was really the first to make the distinction between what is beautiful and what is sublime. So for him, the sublime had to have this terror in the equation, so to speak.
And I believe that to answer Kate's question next to this one, the filtering through Heidegger can also be seen from what Heidegger refers to. When we were reading Identity and Difference and then the text on Perdurance, the ontological foundation of physics, he refers to passages on Hegel where Hegel says that pure being, the one that has got no determination, precisely because it's got no determination whatsoever, is nothing. So being passes into nothing. And nothing, the thing that is absolutely nothing, is nothing, precisely because it is nothing, is. So being and nothing pass into each other constantly. And by this continuous reversing into each other, they create becoming, time. A very similar game plays between big being and small beings in Heidegger. Small beings look for the foundation into a big being that is never entirely attainable, and then big being comes back as the overwhelming thing that is shared by them all. So, but instead of going somewhere, as for Hegel, for Heidegger, this is just a sort of continuous vibration back and forth, which stands on nothing. If you stop these passing into each other, then you stop time, and that just shows you the abyss for Heidegger or complete terror for Kant stroke Lyotard to me. And you just see how things could actually stop and would be no longer anything happening.
I don't see why you've taken the time out of Kant to do that, because the Kant temporality remains in Kant. You know, if you're looking at a house in Kant and stuff, like a line, he holds the beginning to the end, you walk around the house, you know, he holds the beginning to the end, so you can circle the house. But then when he looks at the pyramids, you know, he describes the pyramids, or St. Peter's Basilica, was it? Stuff, he says, then the beginning drops out of the line, as it were. So that's a temporal thing. I can see why you had to really extract.
No, I didn't think the temporality out of Kant. It was just, I found it, to me, it's always more clear when one thinks of the ground as ground in Heidegger to think of those 2 pages of Hegel, where he speaks of being passive into nothing and nothing passive into being, eternally falling in the water, flowing into each other.
But it's a non-temporal thing he's describing it, because he's not trying to describe anything in time in that movement. It's not
No,
temporal,
that is the logic of time, somehow.
No, it's not time at all. I mean, temporal. It's a logical thought experiment. It's not meant to be. It's not in time. So time.
No, it's not in time, but it's since it. Okay, you're doing some right. I take it back.
You can't take it back, you said it.
I didn't understand her. This is the universe, and this is the how did that? How's that relate to the sublime? This orange card there, piece of paper, which is the universe, or whatever. This one. Yeah.
The edge, the idea of the edge.
It's an idea of.
But the edge is, well, there isn't a kind of firm edge. It's like Muldergraf talks about it a lot. That there's an infinite edge. That sort of, you know, there is no proper edge.
I don't know. I haven't read them yet. It's loads of articles this week about scientists thinking that the universe is a hologram.
Oh, yeah.
Universe. I've saved them ready to read, so I don't know where I can sit on any of that now.
I can make a postdoc for some kind of philosophy, holographic memory, in the things of biophysics and science.
How's this relate to the sublime? I mean, is it like a sublime thought? Are you thinking these things?
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about your descriptions of sublime with the experience anymore. Well, like, I don't know, like, because when you were describing, like, the being on a donkey and walking through a tunnel, I was thinking about when I was younger and used to BMX, and, like, the moment when you know it's going wrong, and you're in midair, and you're looking at the floor, and you know you're going to hit the floor, but you're essentially just kind of, that moment.
Lying.
Yeah, and it's, like, beautiful, because you know something's coming, but it's...
I think the difference is they were talking about temporal distortion. We're talking about temporal distortion, as in going through the tunnel. I know it's of a certain length.
Yeah.
And there should be a certain time, it's like 2 hours. But when you are halfway through, you want that 2 hours to be like 2 seconds. You want it there now, but you want it, or you at least want to see the end of the tunnel, like at the end of the tunnel.
But like,
the temporal.
I suppose that moment for me was temporal, but I just think of like, then it becomes adrenaline, and it becomes a different, becomes too extreme. I don't feel like, I feel separate to mine.
If it collapses to a point in you know, the moment of being in this tunnel where there's no behind and there's no in front, we're just like having to plod one foot in front of the other. Yeah. No, with a tiny speck of a 90s, 80s handheld torch, not like a modern bright.
You did have a tool.
Vaguely,
To refer to the things we've been discussing, is the experience of difference with no description attached.
I'm wondering, you know, if there's another way describing these things, just because of Heidegger's, you know, in the way that his move is to say that, you know, the Kantian position is not a way to talk about the human, it's a way to talk about things. And so this is still Kant within Kant. So even the idea of the determined, non-determined, it's still a bivalent logic, isn't it? Something's determined or it's not determined. So already you're on A is A, or A is not A, or A is not equal to not A. You know, the logic of thought is already engaged. And I was just wondering, the leap out of that, because the whole of Braver's book was about, and Braver, you know, Wittgenstein and Heidegger, about the grounds and the move from the theoretical out of the theory, out of the representational, out of the belonging together part of the belonging together from identity and difference, is the leap into the event of appropriation, which is that vibrating world linguistic thing, which would be another way of saying this, which is more human. More, he would describe not human, but design, you know, more something more appropriate, hence the event of appropriation that is not within the Kantian Aristotle tradition of substance, accident, cause and effect, all that kind of language. So I would just wonder, idly speculate. As you said last week, I was much more
supportive.
Yeah, supportive. And here I was, there's a black hole in me here. You know. So just wondering if there's some other kind of language here, language that you could. And I think, you know, that this is maybe what Lyotard is doing, is making that move of how can we talk about the sublime, the unsayable something, you're saying, which isn't reflected, or is, you know, still reflected through the thoughts of the sublime of Burke and Burke. Longinus, is that the Longinus? Yeah, it's the original in Greek. But to talk about this, that isn't some talk. That's what I said about. I wasn't sure about having the idea of, you know, the sublime in Kant is tied to, you know, things like number and this idea of unity, the idea that you immediately press for a whole. Well, once again, I just want to question, you know, that, not take it on board, because of also what you said about people believing in the expert, and how can you know, reasonable people believe in the expert? Well, we're reasonable people. We're still stuck within the groundless ground, which says that in a way that we are all guilty of believing stuff like ectoplasm, and I'm wondering whether this stuff is ectoplasm and needs to be pushed over to the event of appropriation and a different language to understand it. And I think that's what's happening here. What everyone brings to the table here is their experience or not experience of the sublime, but that sort of takes this, you know, to that event of appropriation and more. The same as what you're trying to do, Kate. I should imagine trying to, you know, make that kind of move away from this grounded in Kantian mathematical or dynamical sublime, out of Lyotard's sublimatory postmodernism, which is pervades everything. I'm just trying to find a, you know, appropriate way of thinking about it through that kind of move. If they're trying to do the same kind of thing. I don't know. Does that make sense? Is that?
So yes.
Well,
looking for your
sorry, I see you sitting there. Your feminine écriture, so it would be trying to make the same kind of move, maybe. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a thing I developed as part of my thesis that I think overlaps with what we've been talking. I just avoided bringing it up because I knew you didn't let me explain it. Quick, do that! Basically,
remember that's watching.
I know. Basically, there's something that I drew on from equatorial feminine called quasical. And a quasical, I think from what we've been talking about, there are different ways of how we think about the sublime, but one of them is, as an artist, when you make work, like, you know, which has come up. And the quasical is, how do you spell that? Quasacle. It's a hybridization of words, which is something that Sisu talks about. And it's basically, she talks about it in writing as the instantaneous, the immediacy of the instantaneous, something in the becoming, or she calls it a to be in the process of. So not something in an event that's happened, but something like the becoming of event, or of how an event happens. So for example, the drip, we can see the cause and effect of the drip, so we know that it's been painted and the effect is the drip, but that there's something, the drip resonates perhaps with the sublime because it's in the process of, as it settles on the canvas, it's still in the process of happening, in the happening of, or is it happening because it's mid-drip but it's actually dried. So quasicles for me is a sense of fruit, is something in the heat of making, something when you're engaged in the heat of making, you're not consciously aware of what you're doing, things happen and you resonate with the work, there's a sort of unsayable element of it. I think the word that comes to me about the sublime is the sort of affect, but I don't think it's necessarily grounded in the experience of the sensory, but the indeterminate element of it perhaps. But that's what I've been thinking of, but I'm not saying.
I think it's always linked to sensory, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
Like with the cause and effect,
Yeah.
the affect to me is what a term that that resonates with me in terms of the sublime. But particularly I'm working with obviously paint, and there's a different material sense, I think, when you're working with materials. It's a different ontology that is to do with materials that relates to the sublime, which is different from when you walk through a tunnel, you actually, which is partially to do with sound and different things and how your movement and stuff like that. So
yeah, well, to further that, just to quote Lyotard again, he says, "No longer how does one make a work of art as the question, but the question is what is it to experience an affect proper to art?" And indeterminacy returns even within the analysis of this last question. So
I think it's a little bit like, we went to the opening of, I can't remember the exhibition that I'd gone, and I remember Dane standing in, because it was, and I was painting, I can't remember what it was, a Caribbean painter, I can't remember the name, and Dane was standing in front of one of the paintings and he just looked really, really troubled, and I looked at the same painting and for me something resonated in me that I can't really explain. It was something just to do with the materials, the fact that there were things mid-drip, and at the same time it was simultaneously pleasurable but also a bit unnerving. For you, that was an entirely different experience. You were just like, it's pain, like, doesn't have any affect on me at all. It's just, that's what it is. So it's not a universal thing, it's just, it's a sort of like, a constellation or a coming together of different things, time, space, your identity, if you want to think of it that way, that all sort of different things. I don't know what the word is, sort of coalescing.
I went into Mark Rothko's Red Room and I had that same experience. I sat there for, I don't know how long, because I just couldn't get out. Like everywhere you looked, it was so, not just beautiful, but just, it was sublime, it was amazing. And people kind of came and went and I was so unaware of them. And I realised I'd been there for ages and ages and ages, just because it was just the most beautiful space, because they just put all the paintings in one room, and it was, the colour just was amazing. It was, the effect was incredible.
So then that's the beautiful and the sublime. So
I think
Yeah, but it was disturbing. They were the ones he painted just before he died,
So it was
and
a
so they
collection.
committed suicide. So they were really.
It was a collection of paintings, not his room. That's just.
Yeah, that's in Texas.
No, it's
that's the chapel.
Yeah.
No, it was a collection of paintings that they put together in the tape.
Yeah, because he's got one that's like actually just red. Like it's not like a selection of.
Yeah, no,
canvases.
these were
It
all
was-
a whole
it was
selection
all-
of red paintings. It was
Yeah.
a series that he did before he died, and they were really they were disturbing and beautiful at the same time. I think it is that moment between pleasure and pain that Johnny was talking about. It's that there has to be a slight disturbance for it to be.
I think
sublime as
I
well.
think I've kind of moved away from the idea of pain and maybe what Dan was saying at the beginning about the nothing else to it. Like the one for me was a Robert Mangold painting, and it's like quarter of a circle, but it's made up of two like canvas pieces. It was a beautiful grey, but it was a kind of the fact there was nothing else to it in its simplicity, but it was like phenomenal. There was nothing painful about it. I didn't ever like be disturbed or kind of worried by it, but it was more of a nothingness.
And when you say phenomenal, it's nice because it's proper a phenomenon,
Yeah.
something that comes to appear, something that comes to the surface, emerges.
Yeah.
It's something is happening rather than nothing happening.
Yeah, there was something happening.
Just to tie to what Stuart was saying about the beautiful and the sublime, I think Lyotard does talk about the sublime being kind of extreme, kind of beautiful.
Okay, because I kind of wondered on a very simple scale.
That's what I thought you were on.
Yeah.
Beautiful is devoid of any of that terror, any of that privation. It doesn't figure into it in any sort of way. That's the argument that from the thought was the first to make.
I'm thinking about the sort of, there's something to do with attunement there, isn't there? And that's maybe where you get the variation. So that individually we're more greater or lesser sense attuned to something. So you might find that one. This is where I then get a bit worried because then it goes into the personal.
But then when you go into that attunement, that's worried me. I wrote something down that if my most extreme experience, or sublime, whichever way it's looked at, is in front of a painting, why do I not paint? This is what I'm thinking now.
Yeah.
Actually.
Well, I don't paint, but I don't think that matters, does it? Our colour to me resonates.
But if that's the thing that makes me feel the
I talked
most.
about last week with Christina. talked
So
about
there's another question of the
colours.
value that you're putting on this.
Right.
Like the object
effect.
and I'm not going to
Okay,
get
it's the
psychoanalysis,
sublime.
but
Yeah.
evokes
So
things
what?
like that.
Is that the
Yeah.
goal
In
to
relation to
aim
Jewism.
for?
I
You
don't
mean?
think
Yeah.
so
Well,
what.
it's
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Specific thing.
There's still a question. I'm still questioning about these names. I give the feelings and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, in like Nietzsche, when he talks about absolute music and the will to power being the kind of yay or nay stage or something, he totally dismisses any kind of emotional respect to music as being conditioned by the society. So emotion he's very suspicious of. And I think I'm feeling a little bit of suspicion about naming these things and what I might be able to name them, how I might
But
be able to describe
this is why the short text of Lyotard is interesting because it keeps the name, but it says, well, what we use under this name is actually changing from Kantian time to the 50s. And this is why I brought up those funny objects of Boston Dynamics.
There's a painting in the Wallace collection in London, I don't know, something the Wallace collection. It's the biggest collection of 17th, 16th century art, and Fragonard and Pouchot and that kind of people. And there's a painting in there, it's just like a 16th century bourgeois Dutch family. It's looking out at the painting. There's a man and a girl and a woman, and there's the hunting dogs, and the man sitting there with the dogs, like this, the ladies, the families sitting next to him, holding out the hair by his legs, like not like that other artist who holds the hair the other way, but the hair this way. Can't remember her name either, you know. And then the little girls representing some fruit and stuff, and they're looking out at the picture at you. And I'm puzzled by this picture. I have no idea what it is that puzzles me about this picture. I stand in front of this picture for hours looking at it, wondering why it captures me. I've got no idea why it captures me, but it does capture me. I think if this became obsession, this would be the sublime. It's never gone that far. It's never, I've not had to sit there, who was saying they sat there, you Dave, and sat there, you say Dave, and stuck there. I think that will be the thing being pushed into the sublime, and I think that's where pain would come in and stuff, in that relation. At the moment, it's just a complete puzzle. I don't know why it puzzles me. Why should it puzzle me? Maybe that's the effect that Lyotard getting with the Barnett Newton. He's looking at this thing. He's being
So
puzzled.
I think we haven't talked about like one Kant obviously sort of like brings in with the dynamical sublime is this aspect where it sort of brings in the notion of like a sense of kind of triumph, like so it's sort of the superiority sort of aspect. So because you're sort of looking at something at a distance, and then we're sort of humbled, but there's also this sort of triumphal aspect, which is also ungrounded.
This is the dynamic of sublime, right?
Yeah.
This is when you're looking at something from a safe, like big seas or mountains, from a safe point of view, isn't it? That's what it's got to. And also just like war like that, which makes you think about us, people's television habits, watching riots, wars on the TV. Is this sublime? Is this a modern sublime? You know, technological sublime or something? You're safe and you're watching the same kind of things that Kant describes, and he talks about war in the same way.
I was just thinking
But
about
then-
the skyfall
But
thing,
because
and
there's a
that minus
distance
thing.
building.
The
Yeah.
dynamic of
Minus.
sublime in Kant is where you're looking at like overhanging rocks, you know, big,
Yeah.
big cliffs and all that kind of stuff, lightning and all the rest of it, or big stormy seas and stuff. But like from the land, from
Right,
the safe
so you're
point,
safe,
you're
yeah.
safe, you're not really involved in it.
But there's also the aspect
That's
of
the
the time
dynamic.
where you're not
Right.
safe,
Mathematics
isn't there?
is
So
when
there's
the
a bit of
numbers
a
don't-
big distinction there.
You try to
Yeah,
quantify
like
this
that's
thing and it's too
where
big.
experience comes in.
But you still pick yourself up that you can even think of the infinite. As it
Right.
It's that, but I'm just wondering about, looking at these things from a safe point of view. Is this another? Is this?
But this is why I was
is this a
insisting
pain, pleasure,
with
pain?
so much.
It's a painful thing to watch, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the same time, you're watching
Keep
it.
watching it, but
Yeah.
This is
But
why I
it's
was
not
insisting
discussed.
so much
Yeah.
It is
before
discussed.
about the position of
Discussed.
the artist that makes, because it's not just about watching. Actually, I believe it's far more important to take into account. Precisely because sublime is not the object, but sublime is the feeling and the judgment of the object. So it's a subjective thing. It's very important to take into account the experience one has in making when one is much more of a subject than a passive viewer. And I don't have an answer for it. I think is much more important, certainly for us, but in general now, because otherwise we keep falling back in this. No, we are the public. Members of the public should stay away because the police is doing
Well, I
something.
don't
We
know.
never participate in our society.
I don't want my passivity from the artwork taken. I don't want to be engaged with the
But
artwork.
whatever else you do.
I don't, I like the taking away my passive contemplation by making me engage with it, that is
No, I don't say you have to engage as public into a participatory piece of work. I say that you are in the making of whatever you're doing, even if it isn't making of art.
Contemplation is passive.
Take that.
I don't think so.
There's no passive kind of contemplation, there's no giving yourself to the object in that sense.
One of the distinctions I've been getting really concentration on Kant. With the notion of the beautiful, he oh no, actually I got it wrong now. Yeah, no, it's the beautiful that he makes a distinction of that's the contemplative, as opposed to the dynamic and the mathematical, where that sets up this movement. So there's a sort of, just to bring in, as we touched on contemplation, the contrast that he sort of sets up. Like restfulness is about the appreciation or taste of beautiful, but this movement is key to whether it's the dynamical or the mathematical sublime. And what also I think was quite interesting was that sort of this movement, so it's got the dynamical and mathematical, and then he says the attunement, the movement that goes on with the mathematical is like a sort of disruption with imagination of the attunement with cognition. So understanding is that's sort of the rupture point goes that way. But then he's saying that with the dynamical, it's like the imagination and reason is the sort of attunement disruption sort of point or point.
The idea of reason is the unity that the mind seeks to find in stuff, but isn't really there. It's like experience, it's the point of reason.
The thing with it, actually, it does bring up about unity is this where he distinguishes this apprehension from the mathematical and the dynamical, the comprehension, that sort of intuition bit. He actually sort of the whole that he's sort of referring to this sort of the aesthetic reflection sort of getting to there is actually touching on the differently whole that Johnny's referencing. It's not the whole of totality, that kind of total whole.
Like
So,
number.
sorry?
Like number.
Well, yeah, like the mathematical sublime sort of the progression of number vowels that did so that sort of triggers the sublime. But then that's not so interesting really, because in terms of what's more radical is that sort of with the dynamical sublime, where this intuition is sort of to do with this sort of rupture from the intuition of this sort of wholeness, which is this differently wholeness. I forgot what I was going to link it to. What I was saying.
What do you mean by differently hold it?
Well, this when we're talking about this universe without sort of, where it's not about a bounded universe, it's the boundless. It's sort of really the edge is thick, sort of. So it's not like just the edge on the surface. In terms of getting a notion of this limitlessness, and so he's saying that Kant's saying that dynamical sublime sort of is part of this event is the kind of this bringing to awareness the subjective sort of awareness of the limitlessness. That's sort of the.
But this is something not. It's a thought experiment, not an experience. You can't see what we're talking about in the edge of the universe or this kind of stuff.
Isn't it this lovely thing in the hose that's where the eye kind of, and then you've got an edge and then you've got a limit. But if you're too close to it to see the thing, then you haven't got an edge or a limit.
That would have sort of just explode.
Is that what you're
That's
talking
the
about?
mathematical
Yes,
sublime.
when it fractures.
Well, here's a question from Matthew actually. I mean, numbers, are they ideas of reason, or do you meet did you meet numbers in experience?
Not that. I think there are ideas of reason. I've been very much influenced by reading trading, just describes mathematics as art, as a poem, maybe as a creativity and intuition.
So it's something you're kind of projecting onto the world.
Yes. And it's an completely abstracted form of imagination in terms of there is nothing that refers to it. But then it is applicable. It uses in computational studies for computers, but at the same time, things that you cannot calculate or predict all the prime numbers that are out there. There is no formula that can tell you how many there are, which one they are. You just have to count it on a simple point. What relation that has to this reality, I can't tell. I'm not a mathematician. The fact that some numbers are not, you cannot produce them. You can only find them when you find them. I was thinking now, while the discussion was going on, is a sublime thought. Because they cannot be explained or broken down. We can't reduce them to anything else but themselves, so they just are. They have no other laws about the fact that they are. And the dream of life is to find something simple enough to explain all that happens. Somehow breaks down. If you project to infinity, and that breaks down. It needs a God. And chanting does follows the same path, but doesn't take God in. So it's important to break down. You can't explain that.
After reading that chanting, it seemed like his thing about metabiology is like his kind of way. I think it does close it off. It's like a sort of metaphysics, but metabiology.
Yes,
it's not kind of. It doesn't kind of. It sort of traps itself again.
Yes, no, it is metaphysics by metabiology.
In 2011, he claimed to bring in the new how to new metabiology. That's what he said.
He's quite enthusiastic and stuff.
I proved Darwin. It's all over. That's all of this. I've got two things I can talk about today.
Cool. Okay, Fred.
Right. Try and summarise Lyotard's thought on this paragraph here. Lyotard's thought on what he's trying to do.
Lyotard's what?
Lyotard, what he's trying to suggest in this essay. If it makes any sense. Burke's analyses can easily, as you will have guessed, be resumed and elaborated in a Freudian Lacanian problematic, as Pierre Kaufmann and Baldine Saint-Geron have done. But I recall them in a different spirit, the one my subject, the avant-garde, demands. I have tried to suggest that at the dawn of Romanticism, Burke's elaboration of the aesthetics of the sublime, and to a lesser degree Kant's, outlined a world of possibilities for artistic experiments in which the avant-gardes would later trace out their paths. There are in general no direct influences, no empirically observable connections. Manet, Cézanne, Braque and Picasso probably did not read Kant or Burke. It is more a matter of an irreversible deviation in the destination of art, a deviation affecting all the valences of the artistic condition. The artist attempts combinations allowing the event. The art lover does not experience a simple pleasure or derive some ethical benefit from his contact with art, but expects an intensification of his conceptual and emotional capacity, an ambivalent enjoyment. Intensity is associated with an ontological dislocation. The art object no longer bends itself to models, but tries to present the fact that there is an unpresentable. It no longer imitates nature, but is, in Burke, the actualization of a figure, potentially there in language. The social community no longer recognizes itself in art objects, but ignores them, rejects them as an incomprehensible, and only later allows the intellectual avant-garde to preserve them in museums as the traces of offensives that bear witness to the power and the privation of the spirit. So there he's making a distinction between what does the artist try to do, what's the art lover get. They both can experience moments of sublime, but they're in different ways. There's that's where the subject comes in, how they respond to it, but obviously there's still a sort of a logic which allows that to come about in either of its forms.
Well, there's a good example in Monet when he did the lilies and he was part blind and he painted them violet and he saw them as green, and yet that work just resonates. It's just so powerful to the viewer, isn't it? Because it's almost like he's stepped out, he's done something other, really. Without.
Sorry, say it again. He saw them green. I mean, his eyes saw them green.
He had cataract. He had cataract. So
that's where
he was near
impressionism
blind.
comes from, basically, all the little dots, because he had cataracts.
Okay.
He was near blind at this point, and so he painted the lilies violet. And
because he knew they were.
no, because he saw them as green. He saw the colour as green. But he.
Or he saw the colour of the tube as green. Okay, sorry, I thought. I did not understand.
lily.
No,
What did he see as green? The plants or the paint?
okay, no. He saw the lilies violet because he was going blind. He saw the colour
The
was
flower of the
changed.
lily is violet.
No, the lily
stem.
pad.
Okay, the lily
You know the one. It's a huge piece, and it's all violet.
Yeah.
Colourblind, you're saying.
Yeah, basically he was going colourblind, but he was going blind really. But he was losing the colours were just sort of changing. So he painted what he saw as true.
But he knew it wasn't true by reason,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
his senses told
But
him
he
otherwise.
created a brilliant work of art because of that, I think. So it resonates because it's not true.
There is in this text, Pascal speaks about Cézanne. And
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to now,
Cézanne,
yeah.
then pure sensation.
What was
is-
sorry. Can the page number of that last quote and the one before?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, Jackie.
I was just thinking when you said Cézanne.
Yeah, that one was page 101.
Thank you.
Which one was the one before that?
Well, when you said, what is it? It was about. What is it to experience and affect proper to art
That
as
one
indeterminacy? No longer what is it to experience.
That was 99, wasn't it?
97.
Oh, so.
The last paragraph.
Thank you. I need to get that piece. So Jacqueline, what interrupted you? But
I was just saying, yes, Cézanne, pure sensation.
Yeah, this is what it goes into next. Okay, so he goes on now to talk about Cézanne's paintings, because for Burke, the painting was always going to be trapped in representation. It couldn't really. It had to represent something, but he said he saw language as being able to get out that via the use of poetics. And Lyotard goes on to show that that's how he saw language, was able to come through to painting as well, to open up painting to those infinite potentialities, to be able to bring out the sublime in all these different ways, because painting was opened up out of representation. And he talks about Cézanne. Reading Cézanne's correspondence, one understands that his Aubert was not that of a talented painter finding his style, but that of an artist attempting to respond to the question, what is a painting? His work had at stake to inscribe on the supporting canvas only these coloristic sensations, those little sensations that of themselves, according to Cézanne's hypothesis, constitute the entire pictorial existence of objects, fruit, mountain, face, flower, without consideration of either history or subject, or line or space, or even light. These elementary sensations are hidden in ordinary perception, which remains under the hegemony of habitual or classical ways of looking. They are only accessible to the painter, and can therefore only be re-established by him, at the expense of an interior aesthesis, that rids perceptual and mental fields of prejudices inscribed even in vision itself. So, Cézanne, as a painter, is able to bring these sensations of colour, of this, perhaps the sublime, onto his canvas, to be able to create a work of art. And obviously in doing that, it loses what it had. It loses its sensibility. It becomes a representation, but also doubling that, the painting is able to re-establish what it tried to capture in the first instance. So it doubles its loss, but it also allows, like again, that access to, Lyotard says, the time of the event.
Simultaneously exceeds representation.
Yeah, exactly. It's able to use the tool of the painting, the frame, the support, but it's still able to allow itself to open up an access to why it was painted, what the sublime intent was behind it. If that makes any sense. The last bit I wanted to point out was Merleau-Ponty's role of doubt, which I think doubt again comes back to what we've been talking in Groundless Grounds, how the doubt sort of bottoms out as a groundless grounding. Maurice Merleau-Ponty elaborated on what he rightly called Cézanne's doubt, as though what was at stake for the painter was indeed to grasp and render perception at its birth, perception before perception. I would say, colour in its occurrence, the wonder that it happens, something, colour, at least to the eye. There is credulity on the part of the phenomenologist in this trust he places in the original value of Cézanne's little sensations. The painter himself, who often complained of their inadequacy, wrote that they were abstractions, that they did not suffice for covering the canvas. But why should it be necessary to cover the canvas? Is it forbidden to be abstract? The doubt which gnaws at the avant-garde did not stop with Cézanne's coloristic sensations, as though they were indubitable, and, for that matter, no more did it stop with the abstractions they heralded. The task of having to bear witness to the indeterminate carries away, one after another, the barriers set up by the writings of theorists and by the manifestos of the painters themselves. A formless definition of the pictorial object, such as that proposed in 1961 by Clement Greenberg, were confronted with American post-plastic abstraction, soon overturned by the current of minimalism. Do we have the stretches so that the canvas is taut? No. What about colours? Malevich's black, square and white had already answered this question in 1915. Is an object necessary? Body art and happenings went about proving that it is not. A space at least, a space in which to display, as Duchamp's fountain still suggested. Daniel Buren's work testifies to the fact that even this is subject to doubt. So there he's talking about how artists still be able to grasp the infinite, to be able to shed away its framework and still be able to bring out something like the sublime, a happening, I guess, is what, despite shedding away all the frame, the canvas, any sort of medium, how artists still being able to bring that out. And he goes on to talk about micrology. So yeah, again, it's just basically, as long as you think about the it happens, where does the is it happening figure into a work of art? If you can find a way to access the time of the event and to question the happening within the artwork, then that brings about the feeling of the sublime for the entire.
Did you read the Harvey and Adams book?
Pardon?
Did you read the Harvey and Adams book yet?
Yeah, I've linked it to
Oh yeah, because
correct.
he took that, I think, talks about the little sensations and
Yeah.
stuff as well.
This is that sort of thorny issue of like sort of it's sort of like isn't it? It's not just sort of like kind of it's that delicate thing of like well the sort of the intensity or the sublime of the intensity.
Bang on 4 o'clock.
Thing is, it's not just like if I create intensity, then that's enough. Problem solved. So then it's like, is it a matter of like, well, how do we work with the intensity? But then the thing is, that's where the unpredictable. Well, that's where Lyotard says you can't sort of predispose yourself to the event. So there's this sort of aspect of like kind of, but at the same time, sort of one is working. So then this question of how is it that one is working with the units of the event, or in what way do you, as an artist, do the unnatural as opposed to the sublime of the nature? Because you work with this sort of sublime intensity in a sort of a more kind of, well, a different kind of way, but you don't work with it in a way that predisposes yourself to it, because that's impossible. But on the other hand, there's sort of like a greeting, or there's a that take me to Johnny's essay, which is talking about the Socrates piece, and where she starts talking about the bestowal on debt that references the time.
It's got some, well, Lyotard's emphasis is on, it's not that one is trying to break out of representation to achieve the feeling of the sublime. It's more so the opposite. It's an act of submission that the artist or the art lover is having to make in order to realise the sublime. So the artist will submit to something which is different to what the art lover submits to the work, to allow it to open themselves up to what the work is questioning, and the artist is a different kind of submission, which
that's
bears further thoughts.
But then the art is a recipe of these activities.
Good part time.
None of us can dance, so it's fine.
Mysteries.
You do.
That's all right.
Everything.
Oh, that's